Mm.
Before you get things.
Thanks. Thanks.
If I want to go into YouTube to see which YouTube I should go.
It's not on YouTube. It's only on Zoom.
Huh?
It's only on Zoom.
Oh.
Because we're not doing a live broadcast of YouTube. Upstairs. Yep.
We're in a state of escalating global
Ontario, there is another way forward.
Aaron, are you there?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's just that I couldn't have video and it annoyed me. But then I realized it was probably hard to do it so that you selectively let me have video. You're on video. I'm not sure why, but
You can turn video on now, can't you?
don't know that I can.
Really?
Can't do it. Oh, well, it just did turn on. Weird.
I think you have to try again. Because when you first come in, no video, no chat.
Yeah, well, I did
No.
hit it, so it's interesting. Maybe you have to hit it twice in a row. Anyway, okay, we got Gail Farley. She's not someone we're gonna let in for a while, right?
Yeah, I already sent her a message. I told her that
Okay,
we wouldn't
so
let, we wouldn't
what
let
do you
people.
want? What do you want me to be doing here? Breakout rooms, no reactions,
6:50
chat.
6:50 p.m. You can let everybody in.
Okay, there's no waiting room, right?
No waiting room. Oh, no, there's a waiting room, but there's no
Yeah, there's no, okay, and you put the
list.
message in the waiting room, I take it? It's probably too late anyway.
I put a message in saying that you're here for the Beyond Gas
Oh, good, good.
and Heroes
good.
Energy
And
Future.
as long as you've done that, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion for you. Put a footer in. Oh, first of all, change your font on your master schedule to something decent, not so big. But then also put a date of printing in the footer.
I do.
Because that will help because you've created multiple versions of it. Well, sure, you updated it, right? So if I printed it an hour ago, it's a different document now.
Yeah, okay. Oh, you mean the timestamp?
A timestamp, yeah, I need
Yeah,
to
okay.
know, when
Yeah,
it
right.
was printed. So I would just suggest doing that in your template, as I say, and it would be very helpful if you were to insert a column for comments between your person and your tech, so that who's ever using it could make notes.
Yeah, but I think it takes up more space though.
Yeah, but it's just fine if you drop your font,
Oh.
which
Well,
you should do anyway, because the font is way too big. It's just a waste of paper.
It's big so I can read it. Are you double siding printing?
No.
Oh.
No, I'm not. I'm intentionally not, because I use the scrap for the next thing I do.
Oh, I see.
So, no, I definitely would like to see it. And I'm sure I gave you this feedback last time we did this. I have a feeling of deja vu all over again, but maybe not. Maybe.
Unless I've forgotten. So you're saying change the font size.
Yeah, change the font size so that it's 11, which is good. Everybody can read it. And then put a footer in, which has the print date and time, so that we're all working from the same schedule.
You mean the update time, you mean?
Sure, update time.
Yeah, 'cause
Whatever your last update time is, yeah.
Yeah, update time, not print time.
Right, update time, correct, sorry. Yeah, and I think that will help we just to synchronize people, because this is not untypical to have several versions happen fairly quickly. So working from the same song sheet.
Right.
I think we're fine, but
Did you download the PowerPoint for Jeff?
no, I haven't. Better do that, huh?
Yeah, you better
Where
do
is
that, and you might want to try it out too, so that your portion of the screen is okay.
Yeah, I better do that now. Okay, so honestly, I'm exhausted. If it hadn't been for Val dropping out temporarily, I would have dropped out. I did not. I'm really tired.
What
I
have you
think
been
I'm
doing?
fighting off some kind of a cold. Okay,
Oh.
so I'm going to find this thing in your April 18th production. Is it, which one is it you want me to have? Is there a video? Where's
You're
the video?
showing Jack's
There's the video.
slide.
Right. Oh, pardon me?
You're showing Jack's slides.
Oh, it's Jack's slides, not the video.
No, I'm doing the videos.
You're doing the video. Oh, I'm just doing Jack's slides. Okay, let me go back and see if I can find them. The Ontario's presentations. Okay, let's see. So Jack, that one.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see if I can.
I put his name in front of his slides. So it's easy
Yeah,
to
no,
open.
that was helpful. I've got it. So I need to download it. Oh boy. Download it. All right.
Oh, I think everyone's gonna start coming in pretty soon.
Okay, well, I need to see if this is going to work because okay,
That's fine.
so pardon me.
No, that's fine. I was going to explain that if you see a person has a dot on it, just a dot, that's me. I have a monitor set up.
Okay, so I'm going to want it in presentation format. So let me just, I haven't done this in a while, you know. Okay, where's my presentation option? Slideshow. Oh, forget that.
Avis is here.
Okay, well, I'm letting you handle this. I'm catching up with
Yeah, no, that's fine.
and I've got some stupid coach thing.
Okay, let's switch our language, okay?
Oh man.
Hi, Avis.
Why is it doing this? It's showing all this other stuff.
Avis.
Oh,
Avis, are you there?
okay, so I need to be on Zoom. I'm just gonna try it, okay, because I don't.
Yeah, that's what you should do.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to share my screen and choose my slide, and let's see if it's working. See, I've got this stuff on it. Where's the slideshow option? Why is it no longer letting me choose just slideshow?
Okay, so I've let some people in. Jack is here too.
Oh, this is not good because I can't get it to do what it did for a second. Okay, let me.
Click on slideshow.
I did. I have been. I'm clicking on it like crazy and it's not giving me a slideshow. It's giving me a bunch of other stuff.
That's not good.
I know it's very weird, but let's try it all over again.
Oh,
View.
make co-host.
This is. It just won't let me see only the slides. Why not? Play from start. Okay, I think I got it. But now I've got to.
Hi, Jack. How are you?
Hi, Ray. Good, thanks.
Yeah, congratulations on your article.
Thank you.
I told everybody. I guess
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't usually happen. You have a Toronto Star published article on the same day you're delivering a webcast. So
Yeah. Very,
great timing.
very fortuitous.
I'm just letting people in right now. So pardon me while I do that.
I don't know why. Well, never mind.
Who's Clean Air Partnership?
Hey,
Oh.
hey, Ray.
Yeah.
Question for you. I can't get it to not be full screen when I'm playing the slideshow from the start. Have you ever been able to do that? Like I've got a new version of software and it's like really weird. Have you ever?
Say that again.
I can't do just the slideshow without it being full screen. So I'm just telling you.
Yeah, full screen is okay.
Yeah, but it isn't because I can't see anything if I activate it, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I see.
Never mind. It's not important, but it's not very professional. So I don't know, it's a whole new software set and it's got really
Well,
glitchy changes.
These are actually Jack's slides. This is PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, this is his PowerPoint, but I just wanted to go
Yeah.
right into the full size. And I
Okay.
can't do it without going through this process, so it's too bad. All right,
Mm.
it's okay. Jack, you'll
You're
have to forgive me.
So you're okay now?
No, but Jack will forgive me.
Ray, I think Clean Air Partnership is Gabby, no?
Oh, is that Gabby?
I think so.
Oh,
Yes, definitely.
okay. I brought him in and I brought her in and took her out. Okay,
Oops.
I'm glad you told me. You're right. Yeah, you're right. In my Clean Air Alliance is mixed up. Val, are you there? Can you finish your video on?
Sorry, here I am.
Okay, Lynn is there. Gabby, sorry.
No worries. Hi, Ray. I just can't turn my video. Oh, no, the video's turned on now. It's too dark, eh? I'll find a better lighting. Oh, no, it's
Yeah,
adjusting.
you don't want to have an open window behind you.
I'll move it around when I'm presenting.
Right.
I'll move away from the window so it's not quite as bright.
Okay,
Yeah.
super. Good.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
You want the rocking chair?
I think actually, Gabby, I think I've met you before. You seem to look familiar to me.
You look familiar too, so we must have met.
Oh, all right. Anyway, did you want to try your slides out while we have the opportunity? But do change your background because it's very glowing right now. And you know how to use portion of screen? Wow, what is that? Okay, that looks good. Okay, great. Thanks. Sharon, did you want to try once again? You're muted.
Yes, I can try again. Let's see. Okay. Gotta get through all this junk that's here.
So are people hearing a bell right now when someone comes into the waiting room?
Yeah, I did hear it.
You did hear it? Okay, so I'm going to turn that bell off. And I'm going to start the Zoom recording just so I don't forget for later. And I'm also going to hide non-video participants. So. Excuse me.
So that's it. Okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
But it does have that little interruption at the beginning because I can't do it any other way for some reason. Not sure why.
Sorry, I don't quite get, what's the problem?
Well, it should go directly to a full screen and it doesn't.
But you had it on virtually.
I know, but it started out showing the slides at the side,
Oh, okay.
which is just glitchy.
Hey, Ray, is that background a bit better?
Ray, you're on mute.
Thanks. We're taking a call from Millie.
Yeah. Just
Okay.
wanted to, yeah, Ray, is that background bright enough? Without being like over bright?
Actually, it's kind of dark now, but
It's kind of dark now. Okay.
space.
Let me just try and see if some virtual background I can create.
All right. Hey, Millie. Okay, so I guess we're all here, and everybody should be a co-host. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm Ray Nakano. I'm the tech lead for tonight's webcast. We've done this quite a few times before, so we're always learning from every session that we do. Sharon will be the wrangler. She'll be the person letting people into the room and just watching generally for any inappropriate behavior. Val will be looking after putting the links to be shared, websites to be shared into the chat. And Millie will be looking after doing Q&A. So she's doing double duty today. She's the opening host and also the Q&A person. So she'll be passing however you're going to do it, Millie. I guess you've worked that out with Avis, who's not here right now. Where'd she go? Anyway. So I guess there was a change because I actually trained up a new tech lead yesterday, and she apparently got food poisoning, so she couldn't show up today. So Sharon's really stepped into the breach at the very last moment. So I really appreciate that, Sharon. Thank you. What else is there? I guess the only person that's not here is Mark, our main speaker. And he's going to be showing up at 6:50, which I hope I can catch him when he comes into the waiting room, because I have to make him a co-host. Otherwise, he can't chat, he can't share, he can't start his video, he can't turn on his audio either. So hopefully we do catch him in time. And I think that's basically it. Basically, I guess you're going to be waiting for, in Avis's case, Millie will introduce you. Millie will introduce Lynn as well. Avis will be basically introducing all their speakers. So Jack, Gabby, and Mark. So we ask that you all be muted with your video off until you're introduced. And then you would turn your video on, unmute. And then once you're finished, unless there's a Q&A, which I think there is Q&A for both Jack, Gabby, and for Mark, then you would just basically stay on. I think Gabby leaves and comes back when the Q&A starts for the two local speakers, which would be Jack and Gabby, if I remember correctly. So that's basically it. I'll be playing a video before the official start of the webcast. I'll be playing a video after the closing of the webcast. Or I guess the official closing, and then I'll be playing a video. Yeah, and I think that's about it. Any questions? Yes, Millie, you're muted. Oh.
Sure. Yeah. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the point at which cameras for the audience could come on near the end, is it still okay if they come on, say, at the beginning of the second Q&A?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I'll enable that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So
Yeah.
in that case, Avis, if it's not too late for you to add it to your notes, if you can just let people know to say, hey, you can all come on now. And it just creates a nice feeling if everyone can see each other towards the end. So that'd be great.
Okay. Maybe, why don't you, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I've got these for audio and I also have a Yeti mic. I don't know which one you prefer.
You sound fine right now.
Sound fine? I'm not hearing you in here, so I got to figure out what.
Okay, that's not good. Maybe try going.
I'm going to go to sound. And why is it not there? Now, preferences. I normally have this figured out, but let me go to Bluetooth. Anyways, maybe what you can do, Millie, is just text me when you want to say everybody can come on if you want to.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. So,
Yeah, you
Ray, you got
any?
any ideas? Just a second. I have to remember what the path is to do this.
I don't really use
I have to
earbuds.
Bluetooth it. I have to Bluetooth it.
Avis, if you go down to the mute button and you see the little arrow there,
Yeah.
if you open that little arrow, it'll say that there's a select a microphone and select a speaker.
Yeah, it's not on there. That's my thing.
Okay,
That's my default spot. Hi, Gabriella. Nice to meet you. Yeah, Bluetooth. Let's just see where we're going. AirPods. See if this works. Nope. This one.
Oh, who is?
I mean, I can hear you all. So why isn't it not going on? Turn Bluetooth off. No. Okay, I will give it one more minute. But if you can hear me okay, are you hearing me from the mic then?
No, we can hear you fine.
Sorry, from...
We can hear you right. We can hear you fine right now. Can you hear us?
Oh yeah, I can hear you fine. So if I can't figure it out in the next 2 minutes, I'll just go with the audio there. So sound. Nice to meet everybody, by the way. Hello. Here we are.
Hello, nice to meet you too.
I'm in.
Okay.
Ben.
Great.
Wait, talk to me, Ray.
Yeah. So I'm the tech lead for your
Hang
webcam.
on.
I hope you heard that earlier. I'm not sure if you did.
Just a second. Okay, talk to me now. It should be in.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but not on my earpods. So set speaker there. Let's do this one. And let's try this. Okay, I got it. Yay, I'm over 60. I'm allowed to I'm allowed to goof up every once in a while. Okay.
Well, I won't tell you how old I am then.
Yeah. You know what? I know what to do. I do it often enough, but it's like, what? Okay. Anyways,
Okay.
hello everybody. Okay, so Millie, just at the end, where do you want to do when we do the Q&A? Do you want to put everybody up on the Q&A?
Yeah, on the second one. So I think Ray was kind of saying, let's keep people off camera till towards the end. So for for Mark's initial Q&A, I guess we're having cameras off. Is that correct, Ray?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we have our second Q&A for our expert local panel, Jack and Gabby, that's the point at which we could turn on the cameras.
Yeah. Okay.
And I can let you know, Millie, when I've done that, if that's you want to, or should I just tell Avis directly?
Yeah, just whatever you have to do, either text me. I mean, I'll try and leave the meeting chat open. Oh, sorry. Do not bring anyone into the main room. That was me. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay, good. So I'll just check.
Avis. Okay. Okay, so are there any questions? Anyone? Everyone's tried out their slides, at least Gabby has, Sharon has done that for Jack. And Mark's not here, so I'm not going to worry about that. I think he's doing his own slides anyway. So Val, you have a question? Or is that just a finger?
Two things. I'm putting things into the chat as they come up, and there isn't anything so far for Gabby and Jack in terms of like links you might want to share or something. Is that true? And if you want to share anything, you can pop it in the chat and I will take it out of the chat now and put it in. Yeah, if there's any late breaking things. And the other thing is I'm going to be the timekeeper. So if you're going over or like when you have about 2 minutes left, I'll just direct message you, so you can just kind of keep an eye on that. And then Avis, if once somebody's time is up, if you bring your video
Camera.
back on, that's their cue that their time.
All right.
Yeah.
Is
the
it?
visual-
Yeah. Roy, Ray, is it any problem if I just keep it on? Because otherwise I'm going to come in, like I'll go off in marks because it's longer, but
Mhm.
oh, you're afraid I'll mute the audio so I don't pop up surprisingly.
No, I'm not afraid of that. So just be careful. The co-host capability is almost the same as a host. You can actually remove people from the session, or you can do whatever anything that I can do. So
Okay.
be careful. But the reason we ask you to go off video is that when a person is presenting, we just want to have the picture of the Zoom image
Okay.
of the person presenting on camera. And this is being
Okay.
recorded, so it will be looked at in the by
Okay.
future audience as well. So,
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Back
Yeah.
in a second.
Okay, Lynn, you have a question?
I just wanted to suggest that Val puts the link to Jack's article from today in when Jack is speaking.
Good idea. I should have thought of that. Very good. Yeah, just as Val has mentioned, if there's anything that Jack or Gabby you would like to see in the chat, either start your presentation or the end of your presentation, just let her know. She can do that. We've already received some links from Mark Jacobson. He's given us some material. We have a survey link that we'll be putting into the chat at the very end of the session. Actually, I created two opportunities. One at the start of the Q&A, because some people may tend to start leaving it to the last Q&A. So I'm suggesting that you put the survey link into the chat at that point. And then when we finally close, to actually put the survey link into the chat as well. So we're just trying to remind people. So, and I think it always helps.
Yeah, even during my closing comments, you could put it in a couple of times. I think I mentioned it a couple of times, early on and at the end.
Oh, you mean the survey link?
Yeah.
Oh,
it could go
right.
in twice during my closing remarks. At the end, I'll say, and I'll click on that link right now. So, that'll be the last one, but
okay.
See what you can do. Thanks.
You got that, Val?
Millie's got a question there.
Oh, yeah, Millie?
Sure. I just want to be sure that I do everything okay for the Q&A. So Avis had said she was fine if, whichever picture or whichever questions we're picking out, that I would send it to you in the chat. And then if that's a problem, Avis, let me know and I'll try to text. But I just thought it's a lot faster, to do it by chat.
Yeah.
But Val, is there anything I should be doing for you with those same questions? Like, do you want me to copy them into your box as well, or just send them to Avis?
Yes. I don't think I'm having anything to do with that unless you
Okay.
want assistance. But-
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. So
Yeah.
that's fine.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah,
and
no-
I was a little distracted because I was just off getting the article, and I also got from Angela the toolkit that she wants to have she wants it circulated. So Jack, I'll put the toolkit in the chat along with your article towards the end, or when you mention it, or when would you like me to put it in, I guess?
Oh, whenever you think's best. Yeah.
Okay.
And Val, I'm sorry, I don't have a cell phone with me, so you can't text me. So if I'm going overtime, you're going to have to signal it some other way.
Oh, well, that's why we asked Avis to turn on her video when your time is actually up. It's really a visual cue. So if you see Avis appear on the screen along with yourself, then that's your cue that your time is up and you need to wrap up. Okay.
Great.
All right.
I'll put I'm actually not, I didn't think I was telling people on their cell phones. I'm telling you on the chat, like a private message, right, Ray?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're doing it. Yeah, sorry, you're doing it through the chat. Yeah, we don't use a cell phone, though our tech team has a backup just in case. So,
right.
Okay, anything else? We've still got 7 minutes before we open up the session and let the people in from the waiting room. Jack, any questions?
No.
No. Avis, you okay? Can you hear me?
I'm
okay?
good.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. All
Millie?
good.
Okay, good. Millie?
Just one quick comment that we're at right around 400 registrants. So just to give you the tally. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay,
So
so
we'll
our
see.
rule,
how the show.
yeah, our rule of thumb is usually 50% because for free webcasts and webinars, and it's generally held true like over probably about 20, 25 webcasts that we've done. So still that 200 people is a lot of people. So that's great. That's great news.
What's the 50% rule of thumb you were saying? Is that the number of people who registered or the number
No.
that are?
Of the number of people who register, the rule of thumb is that 50% of them will actually show up. So,
Okay.
so we can expect about 200, at least 200 people to show up in our session,
Okay.
which is a pretty
Good.
good number for our webcast.
Fantastic. Good.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Avis, any questions, Avis? No?
Nope.
Okay.
Ray, I do have one question now, especially knowing the numbers. Am I to help Sharon bring people in, admit people?
Sure.
I was gonna, yeah, okay.
Is
Yeah,
that,
Sure.
how does that work, Sharon? If I see admit, I'll just,
Well, it can get a little weird because I'll try to admit them, but if you do it at the same time, then
Double click. Yeah.
it's kind of strange. So I would say only if you see them queuing up,
okay.
because it's a little awkward to have two people doing it. And we've just run into some
Yeah.
collisions.
What happens? You have a double click and the person stays in the room. You kind of wonder what happened.
I see. So if I see them queuing up, do you want me to go to the end of the queue and?
Yeah, that's the best. Yeah, but it moves very quickly. So it's like really
Okay.
hard.
Well, I
But,
don't want to
anyway.
interfere. I just want to be helpful, but maybe,
Yeah.
maybe it's.
I mean, I don't really know, it's hard to tell. Right now, there are only 9 people in the waiting room, so it's not exactly anywhere near,
There's 9 people there. I didn't see that.
according to what I see, but
Yeah, I got 10 people there. Okay, so everyone is going to go dark. Millie, you're the only person. Check. Yeah, you're the only person that has your video on. Generally, what the host does for people that can't turn their video on or say anything, the host will just actually chat to the audience to say, welcome. Just tell us where you're from, and you can say this verbally, but you can ask them to put where they're from in the chat. We've done that before. So basically, just I guess having carry on start a conversation with people that are there. So I'm going to be.
Lynn, is that a fresh hand or an old hand?
I think it's in fresh hand. Lynn?
It's a fresh hand. I just wanted to say, to check that Val has 2 links for the land acknowledgement. The article in National Observer and the other one that we just got today.
Let me check.
Do you have 2? Yeah.
I gotta check.
And
Okay, and then Lynn, Millie, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so just a quick question then, if you would like me to sort of be, talking to people as they come in, when is the video then? So I'm talking from 6:50 until the video comes on?
Well, I'll actually I'm showing the graphic for the workshop so people know that they're in the right place.
Right.
But I'm planning to play the video at 6:57.
Okay.
Okay.
So when would you want me to be sort of informally welcoming people?
I'm going to start coming in.
Okay.
At 6:50.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that's good.
Val, we have 3 minutes.
So I'm just letting Lynn know I only have the National Observer article. I don't have another link.
Did she send it to you?
but we got it today from Angela. So I'll just look at my email from Angela and I'll put it in the chat directed to you, Val, okay?
Okay. I have the one from Angela about their toolkit. That's not what you're talking about?
No, I don't mean the toolkit, no.
Yes.
It's about how it's Mark talking about how all this renewable energy is less of a problem for the environment,
Yes.
because people are concerned about mining for the transition.
What was Val sent this
Sorry.
this link?
Yes,
Lynn?
Lynn, don't worry, I can get it. I know what you're talking about now. I didn't realize.
I think I forwarded it to you, yes.
Okay.
And then the last thing I wanted to say is, Gabby, do you want me to, if you want to throw me in the chat, like the links for for the Clean Air Partnership, like to your websites or something? Yeah. Okay.
Do you want me to just put it directly to you, or do you want me to just throw it in the chat?
Just throw it right. Well, better put it directly to me at this point.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, Sharon, I forgot to mention that if you can be on the lookout for Mark Jacobson as well, because when he shows up in the waiting room, there's gonna be a whole bunch of other people there, right?
Does he know to use his real name? Say,
I'm assuming so.
I hope so. Okay.
Well, Millie didn't actually, but that's okay. That's another story.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go dark because it's 1 minute to 6:50, and everyone else should be going dark except for Millie because she'll be the one opening up the session. So good luck, everyone. Hope you have a good session.
Welcome to everybody. Good to see people joining our webinar tonight, Beyond Gas, Ontario's Energy Future. And we're going to let people in slowly over the next few minutes. And it's been great to see people in the waiting room ahead of time. We've got a few hundred people registered, so hoping for a really good turnout synchronously during the event as well. And we'll just give people a few minutes to join. If you'd like to, we'd welcome people to enter a little bit about yourself in the chat, if you like, where you're joining from. If you are affiliated with an organization, please feel free, just to tell us a little bit about yourself in the chat. And the chat will be enabled throughout the webinar so that you can all communicate with each other. Our videos will be for the most part, will be turned off at the beginning of the program, but we will have a chance for everyone to come on camera at the end so we can all see each other and feel the energy. Great, nice to see some of the first posts there, and we're really hoping to have people from all over the province, and wonderful. I think even in the planning of this, we've really seen people coming together, and the outreach has been wonderful. As you know, I see already a post from a councillor, so thank you so much for joining us. We're really hoping that this session will be of value to to our elected officials and policymakers, and of course to all the rest of us, to the public. So really looking forward to for all of us to learn a lot together tonight. For those who are just joining, I was mentioning earlier that we welcome you to post a little bit about yourself in the chat, so that we can see where people are joining from, and if you're affiliated with any groups, anything else that you think might be relevant, we would love to hear and see in the posts. And while we're letting people join, I'll make a little plug as well for during the chat as well, or during the Q&A, to please make use of the chat. We will have one Q&A to be done after our keynote speaker, Dr. Jacobson, and then we will have a second Q&A for our local expert panel. And we really encourage a lot of questions. The ability to interact with our experts is a big part of sort of being here tonight and gathering all at the same time. So we encourage that discussion and hope for some great questions. That's great. I am seeing in the chat here people from different regions, and that's just great to see. And tonight's webinar and the entire Beyond Gas campaign is the product of multiple groups working together in an alliance, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the welcome. But we want to thank all of our participating partners, and we hope to see this grow and really take off over the next few months, to really galvanize the momentum that we need to set ourselves in the right direction. And we'll be cutting out shortly into a little introductory video that we have. The Ontario Climate Emergency Campaign helps to connect and network a lot of these different partner groups. And we have a little introduction to the OCEC, or Ontario Climate Emergency Campaign. And we'll run that in a moment, and then we'll run into our main program. And that'll give people a few more minutes to join. And I just love the running tally I see here in the chat of everybody joining from all over. This is wonderful.
We're in a state of escalating global climate emergency. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has declared a code red for humanity. Our window of time to act is rapidly closing.
But all the solutions we need to prevail exist right now. Our governments just aren't implementing them fast enough. Our only way to ensure a livable future is through urgent climate action massively and collectively driven at every level of our societies and governments.
In Ontario, the Ontario Climate Emergency Campaign seeks exactly this transformation. This growing nonpartisan movement brings together Ontarians from every walk of life and every corner of the province to recognize all that is threatened. Everything we love and cherish, our health, our very way of life.
This campaign connects the collective power of all of our voices to urge government to take climate action required of this moment. Let's vote for real, coherent climate policy. Let's hold our elected officials accountable to implementing the critical evidence-based climate solutions that we need. Let's accept nothing less from government because there has never been more at stake. Because if the climate fails, every injustice will be amplified.
Join the Ontario Climate Emergency Campaign now and ask those you know to become part of an unstoppable force for change.
This is our opportunity to come together to secure a safe, healthy, and just future for ourselves, our children, and generations to come.
Great, thank you. And with that, that brings us to 7 o'clock, and we'll begin our main program. So I want to begin on behalf of all our partner groups to welcome everyone to Beyond Gas, Ontario's Energy Future. I'm Dr. Millie Roy, co-chair of the Ontario Climate Emergency Campaign and Ontario chair for the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Tonight's webinar launches the Beyond Gas campaign. Multiple organizations and individuals have formed a province-wide alliance responding to the Ontario government plan to ramp up gas-fired electricity, accelerating the burning of fossil fuels in the midst of a climate emergency. The Beyond Gas campaign aims to counter polluting methane gas-fired electricity in Ontario by promoting clean, renewable energy development instead. Tonight's event will inform the public and our elected officials about the overwhelming advantages of renewables over the inherent harms of methane gas-fired electricity. In the months ahead, the campaign will also support Ontarians to lobby their elected officials to take an informed stance against gas expansion, to protect public interest as bids for gas expansion are heard in councils across the province. So please sit back and get set to learn from the experts. We'll begin with our international expert, Dr. Mark Jacobson, followed by our local experts, Gabby Kalapos and Jack Gibbons, with a Q&A during each segment, where we encourage you to post your questions in the chat. So while your cameras will be off initially, we'll also encourage you to turn them on from the second Q&A onwards, so we can all see each other gathered and feel the energy towards the end of the program. With that, I will turn over to Lynn Adamson, my wonderful co-chair at OCEC and also co-chair at Climate Fest, to do our land acknowledgement. So over to you, Lynn.
Thank you, Millie. We acknowledge the sacred land on which we live and meet today. This land and its beings have been cared for by diverse First Nations people for many thousands of years. In Toronto, this includes the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, Seneca, and the Petun First Nations. Today's Toronto residents are party to Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Those of us tuning in from anywhere in the Great Lakes Basin are invited to share and care for the land and living beings through the hundreds of years old Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. This land is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We recognize the marginalization of Indigenous peoples, and we pledge our collective efforts to remedy this colonial legacy. I'm going to speak tonight about the contentious Ring of Fire issue in Northern Ontario. We have heard that this area contains precious metals and minerals that we will need for a clean energy future, in particular to fuel electric vehicles. Critics of the development worry the Ring of Fire operation, including the highway that will be needed to transport minerals and materials, will disturb the carbon-rich peatlands. Cree communities in the region call Yehewin Aski, or breathing lands. We have also heard that while 2 First Nations in the area are on board with building a road to prepare for the mining, at least 5 others in the vicinity are not. Chiefs of these other communities were in Toronto recently and refused an audience with Ford. If resource development is not done according to the UN's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, seeking their free, prior, and informed consent, ours will not be a just, clean energy future. Upholding Indigenous sovereignty and following their leadership is a must as we work for a clean energy future here in Ontario and elsewhere. Please look in the chat where you'll see a link to an article on the Ring of Fire and one on the relative impacts, of energy projects. And I will leave it at that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Lynn. And I will go on to make some introductory comments. I want to first of all thank everyone for taking time out to be here tonight and gather for what promises to be an incredible evening of education and inspiration. It's fantastic to see everybody here. The Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, the IPCC's most recent report, confirms with more urgency than ever before, and I quote, "There is a rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all," end quote. We know that burning so-called natural gas, which is a fossil fuel, to generate Ontario's electricity cannot lead to a livable future. While you'll hear many other aspects from our lineup of experts, as a physician, I can't ignore the staggering health risks. In 2020, nearly as many people died worldwide from the burning of fossil gas as from burning coal, the dirtiest energy source on the planet. Gas-fired electricity plants produce damaging air pollutants. These are proven harmful to persons living nearby, such as increased hospitalizations in the elderly, risks to pregnant women and infants due to premature births, asthma in children, disability and sick days in workers, and premature deaths. The production and burning of methane gas also escalates greenhouse gases, driving the climate crisis, which is known to be the single greatest human health crisis that we face. But let's pause here to reflect for a moment on what actually brings us together tonight. What brings me here as a physician and a mother to speak about Ontario's energy future? Well, over the decades, while I went through med school and cared for patients, I increasingly grew concerned at the devastation of our beautiful planet and our only home. With the birth of my first child years ago, I literally held the next generation in my arms. But still I struggled, as many of us do, with how to take action with an intensely busy life. So I committed my retirement years to climate action, but the planet could not wait for my retirement. And then one day I suddenly realized what is well known today, that the climate crisis had become the single greatest health crisis of our time and the greatest threat to all future generations. And suddenly everything came together. The very obstacles that had held me back until that moment of clarity, being a busy mother, a busy physician, suddenly became the springboard that launched me into action. So what brings the rest of you here tonight to discuss the critical question of our energy future? Do you see the connections with the hundreds of US tornadoes in just the past few days, leaving homes and families destroyed? Or the many great rivers of the world that ran dry last summer, while right here in Ontario, a monster derecho storm leveled entire communities and took so many lives? Are you concerned about the massive cost of gas-fired electricity, many times higher than renewables, when so many of us are already struggling with the skyrocketing cost of living? Or maybe you're worried about the missed green job opportunities being kept away from us, while so many other jurisdictions in the world are embracing their green future. The work of over 10,000 scientists in the IPCC report tells us, and I quote again, "The choices and actions implemented in this decade will have impacts now and for thousands of years," end quote. Our energy grid is one of these choices, and we have to get this right. We have come to a moment in time when the very ways in which we move, eat, and live. And the energy we use to do this will determine our future. So we stand at a crossroads right now, facing two very different realities. On this road of fossil fuel-based energy from the past, we can continue through to escalating climate crisis, we can shoot past critical emissions survival targets, and finally, we will cross that point of no return beyond a livable future. Or we can take this final closing window of opportunity to urgently act together to change course to a road not yet traveled, a road beyond gas that is already mapped out and laid out for us, that is reliable, affordable, and fully achievable. So we invite you all to join the Beyond Gas campaign and take that road to green energy, conservation, and storage options, our only way forward to the healthy, thriving, sustainable future we all deserve. So spread the word to everyone you know and take a stand against the dirty energy of the past that will rapidly make our near future unlivable. And this campaign will show you how. We are the last generation who can make this choice. Our children and all future generations are depending on us. So let's make the right choice right now. And with that, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the remainder of the evening, a name and a face well known by so many Canadians across the country, Avis Favreau. As the country's longest serving television health correspondent, Avis has always had one mission, telling stories that help Canadians. Over the past 4 decades, she covered the rise of AIDS, HIV through to the COVID pandemic. It's become clear that many health issues are linked to our environment, an issue that is now top of her mind. During the pandemic, she became a grandmother to 4 adorable children for whom she wants to leave a better world. Favreau holds an honorary PhD from McMaster University, where she was the first journalist in residence at the Faculty of Science. She is a graduate of Western University in London, Ontario, where she earned a master's degree in journalism. And so now over to you, Avis, and thank you so much for giving of your time and expertise to be with us tonight to moderate and host our event.
Oh, thank you so much, Millie Roy. I have to say, your opening speech was amazing, very heartfelt and very important. And I just want to thank everyone who's joining. I have to say, I love seeing people say where they're coming from across the province. So welcome to everyone, whether it's snowing in your area or not, because it was snowing here earlier. As Millie mentioned, I have covered health for almost 4 decades. And one of the interesting things was that at the beginning of my career covering health, there was actually no real link between the brown air that hung over Toronto and our health. But it's something that I could see these connections being made over the years to where now it's very clear there's a link between the quality of our air and the quality of our health, the quality of our water, the quality of our health. And now it is undeniable that climate change is having a huge effect. There's no mistaking it. And more recently, there's been research showing that air quality in particular is linked to a host of health problems, including lung diseases, stroke, even dementia, as the particles embed themselves into our bodies. Health Canada estimates that the above normal background level of air pollution, so that's air pollution from human sources, is probably responsible for some 15,000 premature deaths in Canada every year. Premature deaths, some 2.7 million asthma symptom days, some 35 million acute respiratory symptom days per year. And the total economic cost of all of these impacts attributable to air pollution, $120 billion a year. That's a B there. So as a new grandmother, as Dr. Roy said, I'm going to do the grandmother thing. There's Katie Bug and Michael and Kennedy, and there's another one named Baby Ford. These are what I think about, the air that they're breathing and the air that they will breathe for the rest of their lives. So what can we do? So that is why I'm happy to be here to facilitate this discussion, preparing for this has actually been very educational. I think I know a lot, but there's so much more to learn. And you will hear from some experts who will be able to dispel some myths and give you some perspectives on all of this. As mentioned, the Ontario government, the political leaders have chosen natural gas plants and nuclear power to service the increased demand that we're going to need for electricity, because the bottom line is that Ontario and Canada will need to double the amount of electricity that we can output in order to meet the demand for electric vehicles, for heat pumps, to heat homes and to do air conditioning. But the question is there a better way to do this? And you're going to meet some experts with opinions on options. Our first speaker comes to us tonight from the other side of the continent, where I know it's not snowing. I'm sorry, the snow shocked me today. And California, he's in California, that has a state that has endured dramatic and a deadly shift in weather patterns of late, linked to climate change, suffering fires and flooding. Dr. Mark Jacobson is a professor of civil and environmental engineering at Stanford University. He's also the director of the Atmosphere Energy Program. Sorry, got a bit of a cold. He's rated as one of the top 1,800 scientists among some 10 million worldwide in recent times in all fields in terms of the impact of the papers that he's published. And it's work that's been largely dedicated in finding solutions to large-scale air pollution and climate problems. So he's also authored a book just published a couple of months ago called No Miracles Needed: How Today's Technology Can Save Our Planet and Clear Our Air. Please welcome from California, Mark Jacobson.
All right. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. And I'm going to just share my screen to give and present about how we don't need a miracle technology to address climate, air pollution, and energy security. We have 95% of what we need, and we know how to do the rest. So really, there are three problems that I think are really important, and these have all been mentioned in some degree or the other already. Air pollution causes 7 million premature deaths each year worldwide, costing on the order of $30 trillion per year in terms of statistical cost of life and morbidity. Global warming is expected to cost $30 trillion by 2050 per year. And energy security is a major problem. There are many types of energy security, including the fact that fossil fuels are limited resources and they will run out at some point, resulting in energy price instability, economic and social instability as well. Anyway, these are all three problems that require immediate and drastic solutions. So since 2009, we've been developing energy plans to transition countries and states and cities and towns entirely to clean renewable energy, namely wind and water and solar for all purposes. And there are four major energy sectors: electricity, transportation, building, heating and cooling, and industry. And the idea would be to electrify all energy and provide that electricity with just wind, water, and solar. For example, for transportation, we'd use mostly battery electric vehicles, but some hydrogen fuel cell for long distance heavy transport. For buildings, we'd go to electric heat pumps, primarily for individual buildings. We'd use some district heating and cooling, where even heat pumps would be used to raise the temperature of hot water and lower the temperature of cold water. And we'd have some geothermal and solar heat for district heating as well. For industry, we would use electric arc furnaces, induction furnaces, resistance furnaces, dielectric heaters, electron beam heaters, also heat pumps instead of fossil fuel and biomass heating. And all the electricity and heat would be provided by just wind, water, and solar. So for electricity, we'd use onshore and offshore wind, solar photovoltaics on rooftops and in power plants, concentrated solar power, geothermal, hydroelectric, tidal, and wave. Of course, we need storage for 100% renewable energy world, because the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. There are many types of electricity storage options already available. There's concentrated solar power storage, pumped hydro, electric power, existing hydroelectric dams, batteries, flywheels, compressed air storage, gravitational storage, hydrogen fuel cells, and hydrogen storage for the grid. For heating and cooling, we have water tank storage already for both hot and cold, ice storage for cold, and underground heat storage in boreholes, water pits, and aquifers. And also we can store heat in building materials. And then we'll also need hydrogen for non-grid purposes such as ammonia production, steel production, and long distance transport. And hydrogen can be used for storage as well. Now, I've talked a lot about hydrogen, or you've heard a lot about it, and just want to give you my opinion about what are the good and bad sources. Well, the only good source of hydrogen in my mind is called green hydrogen, which is from wind, water, and solar electricity. What's not good is from natural gas without or with carbon capture. It's called gray or blue hydrogen. Then not black or brown hydrogen, which is from coal, or pink hydrogen from nuclear electricity, or turquoise hydrogen from methane pyrolysis. In terms of uses of hydrogen, for long distance transport, but not passenger vehicles. So long distance aircraft, ships, trains, trucks, military vehicles using fuel cells, so not combustion. But also it's good use is ammonia and steel manufacturing. And also for remote microgrids, using hydrogen together with batteries for electricity production and heat. Well, with a fuel cell, you can get both electricity and heat out of the fuel cell. That's useful for remote microgrid. Some electricity generation or some electricity storage in combination with batteries, but never hydrogen fuel cells alone for grid storage, just with in combination with batteries. In terms of heating buildings, that's not a good application. Mixing with natural gas for heating buildings, definitely don't want that. We don't want to burn it. And most grid applications are not useful for hydrogen, but some are, as I mentioned, with batteries. Okay, so we do not include in any of our plans carbon capture, direct air capture, blue hydrogen, small, not modular nuclear reactors, bioenergy, non-hydrogen electrofuels, or geoengineering. And I don't have time to go into details, but basically carbon capture and direct air capture and blue hydrogen, they all require, well, carbon capture equipment always requires energy and it requires equipment. And even if you used renewable energy to power these, you could use the same renewable energy to replace part of a fossil fuel power plant and you'll get more carbon dioxide reduction. In addition, you'll reduce the air pollution from the fossil fuel plant, you'll reduce the mining, you'll reduce the infrastructure. So the social cost benefit of using renewable energy to replace a fossil plant is so much higher. It's between 2 to 10 times higher than just using the renewable energy for carbon capture. There's no benefit or basis for using carbon capture. And 75% of all carbon dioxide captured today is used for enhanced oil recovery. During that process, 40% of the CO2 is lost right back to the air. So it's a complete boondoggle, and it's just a tax that's added on top of the cost of the energy. For small modular reactors, they're not much different than large reactors, which take forever to build in liberalized markets. 17 to 21 years now in the United States and Europe, between planning and operation for a new nuclear plant at a cost of about $15 a watt versus $1 a watt for new wind or solar. And the levelized cost of electricity from that nuclear is about 7 to 8 times higher than new wind or solar. So you end up spending 7 to 8 times more for electricity after you've waited 15 years. And so it's just not a solution to the climate problem. Small modular reactors aren't even expected to be around till 2030 for testing. So that's too late. We need 80% of the problem solved by 2030. Plus, they're going to have the same problems as big reactors. The energy security problems, weapons proliferation, you'll have greater weapons proliferation risk with small modular reactors. Meltdown risk, that's uncertain. We don't know what that risk is. You're still going to have waste issues with small modular reactors. You have to store waste for 200,000 years. Still have underground uranium mining risk, and there's carbon dioxide equivalent emissions associated with small modular reactors, just like with large reactors. Bioenergy results in air pollution, lots of land use, lots of water requirements, and hardly any CO2 benefits. Non-hydrogen electrofuels, well, that's using carbon dioxide from carbon capture, which I just discussed is not useful. Plus, you need other chemicals, and all it's doing is replacing gasoline, which you're still going to burn it, still creating air pollution. And it takes a lot of energy, and it's just a complete waste. Better to go to electric vehicles, some hydrogen fuel cell. Geoengineering is just putting pollution particles into the stratosphere that will just allow fossil fuels to continue and will cause our problems to grow, not decrease. And it'll mask some of the sunlight, so reducing photosynthesis, therefore possibly causing crop devastation in many places in the world. Well, before I talk about our global plans, let me just talk about an individual, how people can change their individual homes. I'll talk about my own home where I built in 2017. No natural gas on the property. It's all solar and batteries and electricity. So 13.6 kilowatts of solar on the roof. There's Tesla wall mount batteries, 4 first generation Tesla wall mount batteries. Heat pumps, which use 1/4 the energy as natural gas for heating. Because they move heat around and cold, they run in reverse for air conditioning. And so they use very little energy. They can extract heat from the air, from the ground, or from a water body. So they're very efficient. Heat pumps for water heating as well. And again, it uses 1/4 the energy as natural gas. For cooking, electric induction cooktop, very efficient, and boils water in half the time as natural gas, cooks very well, and doesn't use much energy. 5 years of energy use with an all-electric home, generated 120, and also have electric vehicles, generated 120% of all home and vehicle energy use, no electric bill, no natural gas bill or gasoline bill in 5 years. And the extra 20% of electricity I sold back to the community choice aggregation utility in our area for $860 per year that they would pay for that extra electricity. I avoided about $6,000 in a gas hookup fee, about $10,000 in gas pipes, and all these bills. So the payback time was 5 years. I've already paid back the system for the solar system and the battery system, and there were subsidies. Without subsidies, it would be 10-year payback. Solar is warranted for 25 years. It's really amazing. All these appliances and machines are really energy efficient these days, and solar works extremely well. Can we actually translate this to a worldwide scale, not only for electricity, but transportation, buildings, and industry? So we did plans for 145 countries, and these represent 99.7% of all world emissions. So that in 2018, these countries, their end-use energy use or power demand was about 13.1 trillion watts or terawatts. That's expected to increase to 20.4 terawatts in 2050. But if you electrify all energy and provide the electricity with wind, water, solar, that goes down about 56%, because battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are more efficient than internal combustion engine vehicles. So average worldwide, you reduce about 20.5% of end-use energy by switching. Electrifying industry, about 4.3%, going to heat pumps for heating buildings, go to 13.6% reduction, and then eliminating the energy to mine, transport, and refine fossil fuels and uranium eliminates about 11.3% of all energy worldwide, because that's how much is used for those processes. And then 6.6% energy efficiency improvements beyond business as usual rounds up to 56% total reduction. This slide shows the same information, but on a plot from 2020 to 2050. If we don't do anything, we go along the top line. If we electrify all energy and provide the electricity with wind, water, solar, we go down those 5 shades of colors to the 100% WWS line at 8.9 terawatts. And we would supply that wind, water, solar with a combination of onshore and offshore wind, utility PV, CSP, and solar heat, rooftop PV, geothermal electricity and heat, and hydroelectric power and tidal and wave. This shows the transition of 80% by 2030 and 100% by 2050. If we can do 80% by 2030, we should be able to do 100% by 2035, and that's what this shows. So really, that's the timeline we need to avoid 1.5 degrees global warming. You know, we have the 95% of the technologies we need right now. This shows the mix. Well, we did 145 countries, including Canada, and the world column shows the average of all the 145 countries, and then I showed Canada separately. So let's look at Canada. It would be about 46% onshore wind, 11% offshore wind, 11% rooftop PV, 4% utility PV, no concentrated solar power, about 2.3% geothermal electricity, 25% hydroelectricity, which, by the way, all exists today. There's no new hydro in this plan. So Canada is actually pretty far along in getting to 100% for all purposes. Small amounts of tidal and wave and geothermal heat and solar heat. So there's no nuclear power, no coal, no natural gas, no biomass, no bioenergy, nothing else except wind, water, solar power in Canada for all purposes and eliminating emissions. How much land is needed? Well, worldwide, this is new land beyond what's already installed in 2018. We do not need new land for offshore wind or tidal and wave power. We're not adding any new hydro. Rooftop PV is not new land. Geothermal is pretty small worldwide. So we're just adding land for utility PV and CSP and onshore wind. Although I'll point out that onshore wind is spacing between turbines. And so that can be used for multiple purposes, including putting photovoltaics on. And even the photovoltaic land, some of that can be used for agriculture as well, because if you place photovoltaics above agricultural land, you can allow a lot of crops to grow. In any case, worldwide, it's about 0.53% of world land. In Canada, to repower for all purposes with 100% wind, water, solar, it's only 0.1% of Canada's land area, which is really small. And because it has Canada's blessed with just amazing resources. For comparison, in the US, a transition would be about 0.8% of the land, but fossil fuel industry occupies 1.3% of US land area right now. So can we keep the grid stable? So this shows grid stability analysis for 3 years at a 30-second time resolution over Canada. And we find that we can keep the grid stable with just wind, water, solar, and storage and demand response every 30 seconds for 3 years throughout Canada without any loss of load with just wind, water, and solar. What's the cost of keeping the grid stable? The capital cost worldwide is about $62 trillion. This would be the worldwide Green New Deal. In the US, it's about 9 trillion. In China, it's about 13 trillion. In Canada, it's about 700 billion, which is the annual cost of the military budget in the US, by the way. So this is, these numbers are doable, but what's really more interesting and useful is the annual cost of energy. Right now, the world spends about $11 trillion per year on energy. That's expected to go up to 18 trillion per year in 2050. The health cost will be on the order of 34 trillion per year in 2050. Climate cost about 32 trillion, for a total social cost of 83 trillion per year. Going to wind, water, solar, we would eliminate health and climate costs. Our energy costs go down 63% to 6.6 trillion per year, mostly because of that reduction, that 56% reduction in energy needs, and another 15% reduction in the cost per unit energy. So 63% reduction in energy cost, 92% reduction in social costs by taking the world to 100% wind, water, solar for all purposes. Just the last part about policies. So we started developing the energy plans for the world in 2009. Mark DeLuca and I did a paper which was called A Plan for a Sustainable Future, how to get all energy from wind, water, and solar power by 2030. And we concluded that while technically and economically it's possible to transition the world by 2030 at the time, that was back in 2009, for social and political reasons, a more likely transition would be by 2050, but with about 80% by 2030. Little did we know that paper would be the basis for what's called now the Green New Deal, which is a policy proposal to go to 100% renewables originally by 2030. There are 62 countries now that have laws or policies or commitments to go to 100% renewable electricity. Electricity is only about 20% of all end-use energy, so it's not everything by far. Only Denmark has policies to go to 100% renewables for all energy sectors. There are over 400 international companies committed to 100% renewables, including 8 of the 10 biggest companies in the world. And these companies are making a difference by building wind and solar farms, building battery storage facilities, transitioning their vehicle fleets to battery electric vehicles, and so forth. So they are making a difference, and I would encourage more companies to commit to transitioning. In the US, there are 19 states and territories that have committed to 100% renewable electricity effectively. And they're by different years as seen here. Again, though, this is not all energy, it's just electricity. We've got a long way to go still with buildings, with vehicles, and with industry. There are 180 US cities that have committed and counties that have committed to 100% renewables, and worldwide about 400. There are several, I know of at least 3 or 4 in Canada that have committed to 100% renewables. And so this is really also helpful because city policies are often, they help with building codes, for example, they help with putting more charging stations, they help with encouraging electrifications of buildings. So yeah, cities are very important in this transition. There are actually 16 countries and US states that are either at or above 100% generation or consumption just from wind, water, solar. So for example, those 9 countries on the left, Iceland, Norway, Costa Rica, Paraguay, Albania, Bhutan, Nepal, Ethiopia, and Congo, they generate annually 100% of all the electricity they generate is from wind, water, and solar. But almost all of them, their major sources, hydropower, and then the second source is either geothermal, wind, or solar. Kenya, Tajikistan, and Namibia are all above 91% wind, water, solar in their generation. On the right, these are, South Dakota, it generates 126% of the electricity it consumes from wind, water, solar. So 77% of the electricity it consumes, it generates from wind, and the rest from hydro. It also generates fossil fuels. So the total generation for South Dakota is about 150% of its consumption. The additional 50% is exported. But the point is, there's enough wind, water, solar already generated in South Dakota to provide 100% of its consumption. In Washington State, it's 98% of its consumption is generated by wind, water, solar. Scotland is about 91%. Montana is about 91%. So there are examples of 100% renewable systems. I'm pleased to say that the last Sunday, California for an hour and a half was 100% wind, water, solar, mostly solar. It was 75% solar, about 6.5% wind, 1% small hydro, 10% large hydro, and 5% geothermal. So it was 100% wind, water, solar effectively. In terms of jobs, we think we'd create 28 million more long-term full-time jobs than lost worldwide. As I mentioned, we'd require only about 0.53% of the world's land for footprint plus spacing for transitioning. We'd avoid, by transitioning, 7 million air pollution deaths per year. We'd slow then reverse global warming. We think we can keep the grid stable throughout the world with 100% wind, water, solar. Absolute energy costs are 63% lower with wind, water, solar than fossil fuels, but energy, health, and climate costs are 92% lower. And then finally, if you want more information, as mentioned, there's this new book called No Miracles Needed, which talks about how we don't need miracle technologies to solve our problems. We really need to deploy. We have individual plans for countries, states, cities, and towns, including plans for Canada and some individual cities in Canada at the second website. And also the last website has infographic maps where you can click on a state or city or country or town and up will pop an energy plan. And there's also an online course. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jacobson. That's a lot of information. I actually, before we get into all the questions that are popping up, I noticed that you did separate data on Canada. Can you summarize, generally speaking, how we're doing and where you think the difficult spots are that the country as a whole should tackle, and in particular Ontario?
Well, as I mentioned, the nice thing about Canada is it has an abundance of resources, particularly wind, onshore and offshore wind, and hydropower. And it also has good, so in the annual average, has good solar resources. Of course, it's very seasonal. And so that's where storage comes in. But there's also, like in Drake Landing, just south of Calgary, about an hour, there's a really good underground thermal energy storage facility, the Drake Landing Solar Community. It's been there since 2004 and 5, which has underground heat storage for 6 months. So you collect sunlight in the summer and you store it underground in soil, the heat in the soil, and then you recollect it in the winter basically and power the heating of these 100% of the heating for these homes. And it's really inexpensive actually. So Ontario has a lot of nuclear, of course, but going forward, don't need it. I mean, there's also plenty of hydro, and there's plenty of wind, and there's plenty of interconnection with other parts of Canada and there's also storage is becoming really inexpensive. For example, in California, I mean, the average load not in the summer, it's higher, like the average load in the summer is like 50 gigawatts in California, but in the rest of the year, it's like half of that, 27 gigawatts. There's already 3.3 gigawatts of batteries installed in California. So it meets 12% of California's load except for summer. So there it's about 6%, but that's, half of that was put in the last year. So, there's another 2 or 3 gigawatts going to come in this year. So batteries are so cheap now that, combined with wind and solar, it's just it's no brainer. I mean, Lazard just came out with an analysis of the cost of renewable energy plus storage, and cost of renewable energy and storage in the US beats gas, by far. And I mean, wind or solar alone is half the cost of natural gas. So it's really, the whole thing has changed just in the last year or two, where costs have come down, and there's really no barrier now for Canada to just transition to 100% renewables as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm. So what would be the barriers based on what you're seeing other countries are going through? What do you think?
Well, the biggest barrier I see today, I mean, it used to be that people were criticizing the fact that, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, so the grid's going to fail. But now it's more, there are all these competing options. The fossil fuel industry is getting very creative. So they've come up with these schemes called carbon capture, direct air capture, blue hydrogen, electrofuels. These are all schemes by the fossil fuel industry to stay in business. So they all involve some kind of like keeping fossil fuels alive, but trying to capture the carbon and then use it for different purposes. But these are just all they are is a tax on people, and it's much less efficient than taking that same energy that you would need, because all these schemes need energy to run this equipment, and they say they want to use renewable energy. Well, that renewable energy is much better used to replace the fossil fuel plant, because then you get rid of the air pollution, you get rid of the mining, you get rid of the infrastructure, and you get rid of more carbon. So it's really, and plus the CO2, when they do capture it, most of it, 75% worldwide, is used for enhanced oil recovery to dig more oil out of the ground. And 40% of that CO2 gets thrown right back to the air during that process. So it's just, that's the biggest area right now.
All right, let me go to some of the questions from people watching in. And one has to do about carbon capture. And I think the question was, does carbon capture actually use more electricity to capture the CO2 than you would get from natural gas? And I may not have got that completely right, but that it doesn't balance out? You would expend more, yeah.
Well, so if you add carbon capture, let's say, to a coal plant, the carbon capture equipment will require 30% of the electricity from the coal plant to run. Conversely, you need 30% more coal to run coal plant with carbon capture than without carbon capture. And carbon capture doesn't reduce any of the air pollution from coal. So you have 30% more air pollution, you have 30% more mining of coal, and you might need more infrastructure, and you need carbon capture equipment, and you need pipes to take the CO2 somewhere. So you have more infrastructure, you have more equipment, more cost. Like there was one coal plant in the US that had carbon capture down in Texas. It cost $1 billion to add the carbon capture. They built a natural gas plant just to run the carbon capture equipment for the coal plant. So then they had gas mining, gas pipes, gas pollution, because nothing on the gas plant was captured. So they just had air pollution and CO2 from the gas plant. When you did all the calculations, which I did, there was only over a 20-year time frame. There was only actually 20 to 100-year time frame. There was only 11 to 20% capture rate, net capture rate, and of that, 40% of that was lost due to the enhanced oil recovery after that. So it was really only a 7 to 11% capture rate. Plus, there's more air pollution in mining. And it's just a complete boondoggle, and it cost $1 billion. It shut down after 3 years because it was so inefficient. And so the ratepayers, who are the lowest income ratepayers, are paying the highest fraction of their salaries towards electricity. They're the ones saddled with this bill. It's just
interesting.
Yeah.
I got to keep the eye on what you want to achieve. So the next to another question, Mark, do you have any concerns around offshore wind power?
No, it's great. We need to grow it as fast as possible. I mean, offshore wind, even like there have been studies, offshore wind has been in Europe since the 1990s, and there have been studies, ecological studies, show that they, with the turbines that go into the seabed, they form coral reefs. Now we have floating turbines, so that's even less invasive. But the winds are stronger offshore. You get bigger turbines. And they're steadier as well. And like in California, we get the fastest winds offshore in the summer when we have the highest electricity demand. So especially after the sun sets, because we have a lot of solar in California. But then after the sun sets, normally, the gas kicks in right now. So offshore wind would actually then supply a lot of our electricity after the sun sets. So it's a perfect match. And a lot of places will be perfect match too.
Okay, switching to heat pumps, you brought that up, and one of our viewers is asking, a worry about heat pumps is the high GHG gases currently used in North America in the pumps and possible leakage.
Yeah.
Any
well,
insight on that? And what are GHG gases?
Well, he's referring to the coolant or the refrigerant in a heat pump is like a refrigerant you might use in your car. And so it's an alternative to chlorofluorocarbons, which previously were used like in spray cans and in foam production and solvents that damage the ozone layer. So these coolants are replacements that don't damage the ozone layer, but some of them have high global warming potential. However, they're completely harmless unless they are emitted from the system. And so these systems are there's a chance of leaks, but that leakage rate, even if there's a tiny leak, that's not going to cause any problem. The problem is when people dump these coolants into sewers. It used to be like, for example, in your car, when you had a coolant, you go to the mechanic and they would then take your coolant to replace it, and they would just pour it into the ground, into a drain, and it would all evaporate to the air, and then eventually get up to the ozone layer and cause ozone layer damage. So here we're talking, these coolants the leakage rate is 0. Now you could, if somebody mishandles it, sure, there could be some leakage, but in theory, the leakage should be trivial. So it's not the same as the types of leaks you'd see before with coolants.
And some people are saying that heat pumps, though, are not of real benefit in a northern climate like ours, that they're more efficient and they serve the purpose better in warmer climates.
Yeah, that's actually the opposite. It's actually because you'd use a different type of heat pump in a cold climate. You'd use a ground source heat pump, where like in California, we'd use air source heat pumps, which are efficient because you can just extract heat from the air because it doesn't get really cold or really hot. But when you're in a really cold climate, you want to use a ground source heat pump where you're extracting the heat from the ground. So there's a company, for example, in New York called Dandelion, and they have a technology where they just drill two very narrow holes, 30 feet deep. And so it used to be you'd have to excavate your whole backyard to do this, and then you put in these coils, and it would be really expensive, just the excavation. But this technology, these ground source heat pumps are virtually the same cost as the air source heat pumps. But the coefficient of performance, which is the efficiency of the ground source heat pump, is greater than the air source heat pump. So for example, while an air source heat pump uses 1/3 to 1/4 the energy as a natural gas heater, a ground source heat pump, which you'd use in Canada, uses 1/4 to 1/5 the energy as a gas heater. That's because the temperature under the ground, just a few meters, is very stable. It doesn't change at all. So even if you have snow on the ground, it's very warm under the surface of the soil. And so that's why when you use an air source heat pump like around here, you get variable temperature. It can get cold, it can get hot. So that's why it's a little less efficient than the ground source heat pump.
Several people have been asking about the swap out. I mean, you can reduce mining of fossil fuels, but you're going to increase mining for these metals that are required for the solar panels and for other things. Are we not really just creating a new problem for ourselves?
No, not at all. It's the opposite, because for right now, we're mining continuously for fossil fuels and uranium. So you have to mine every single day forever, natural gas, coal, and oil, just to run our vehicles and to drive for electricity production and for everything else in heating. Whereas when we use wind, water, and solar, we have zero energy. We don't have to mine any energy because wind comes right to the wind turbine, solar comes right to the panel. So we eliminate the fuel mining. We only have mining for the infrastructure itself, which you also have for coal, oil, and gas. You have mining for the infrastructure. So we just need mining for like batteries, for some elements of the solar panels, for example. But we're talking orders of magnitude less mining. So in fact, there's a study looking at how much mining is done. It's like 0.1%. For our whole infrastructure, wind, water, solar infrastructure, we need each year about 0.1% or less of the mining that's done right now for fossil fuels. Keep in mind, in North America alone, there are 50,000 new oil and gas wells drilled every year. In the US, we have 1.3 million active oil and gas wells and 3.2 million abandoned ones. So we'd have to keep drilling 50,000 new oil and gas wells every year to keep going forever. But we have zero mining of that type for wind, water, solar. The only mining is for, let's say, lithium for batteries. However, even lithium for batteries, first of all, batteries can now last, Sonnen makes a battery, it's 15,000 cycles. That's like if you have one cycle a day, that would be 45 years you could let, but there's a calendar life. Let's say it lasts 20, 25 years. Even after 25 years, then the battery can be used, the remainder can be used for stationary electricity storage. So it can be used a few more years. Then it's recycled. Sonnen recycles 100% of their batteries. So the lithium gets used again and again. And plus there are places like 40% of all the lithium in the world could potentially come from the Salton Sea in California. And that they already have geothermal electricity plants bringing up the brine that contains lithium as part of the geothermal electricity. So there's no new mining at all involved there. All you do is extract the lithium from the brine and you're good to go. So there are a lot of options, and it's trivial amount of mining compared to what's going on today.
There are so many questions coming in. I'm going to try to get through as many as I can here. What would be the role of conservation in helping us manage things as opposed to doing natural gas or expanding nuclear?
Well, yeah, the less we can use energy, the easier this is to transition for sure. So conservation, reduced energy use, and also just changing our habits. So certainly telecommuting more, traveling less on airplanes, for example, is helpful. Anything we can do, biking more, walking more, will help. So yeah, that's all part of it. We assume in our plans that people don't do a lot different from what they're doing today, but the more we do change our habits, the better this is, the easier it is to transition.
Okay, another question. They're coming in very quick. You could have your own show, Mark. You got they worry. There's a couple of people who are worried about, and I'm losing the questions because they come in so fast. Let's just see where that other one was. Okay, do you have some tips for homeowners specifically? I mean, there's the larger issue of what the province does, but right now someone did ask, what's a tip for a homeowner? What can people do in the short term?
I would go through each item in your house that uses a fossil fuel, and when it either breaks down or when you're ready to change out that gas heater or oil-based heater, water heater, for example, to a heat pump water heater. Change out your air heating system to a heat pump heating system, and change out your light bulbs to LED light bulbs. Weatherize your home, so seal cracks in doors and windows. That's low-hanging fruit, really inexpensive. Next car, electric car. Electric cars now get ranges up to 500 kilometers. And so electrify everything. There's no reason we have two sources of energy in our house, or three even. And electricity can do everything. And the more we can electrify, the simpler our lives will be, the less we'll be spending money on not only the infrastructure, but also annual costs as well.
All right, another question. How can we dually protect and conserve ecosystems, as well as implementing the WWS, which I really like because it's a good acronym there. One example, the ecological and social impacts of hydro dams.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, in our plans, we do not increase hydroelectric power. We're using what we have today. But I should say, like in the US, there are 84,000 dams, but only 2.5% are hydroelectric dams that have electricity generated with them. So if we want to remove dams, there's basically 97.5%, or maybe it's 97% of the dams. I think we'd start there. Of course, dams are used for multiple purposes, like water supply or irrigation or recreation as well. But I think there are a lot of dams that can be removed before the ones that produce electricity. But I recognize this issue, so we don't increase hydro in our plans. So,
because of the concerns with the environment.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot of objection to growing it. But eventually, once we get to 100% wind, water, solar, I would say let's keep the hydro that's existing until we get there, and then we can, as we get more batteries, because basically hydro is a big battery. So the more that we get regular batteries, we can start phasing out even the hydro, and we'll have plenty of wind and solar to provide the electricity.
The one of the questions that has come up as well is that Ontario's plan will create a lot of jobs in producing the nuclear plant and these gas plants. How do you counter that? How do you argue the science with unions and people who are trying to create jobs and maintain jobs?
Well, we calculate in our plans the job changes due to going to wind, water, solar. And so so we find worldwide there is a growth of jobs of about 28 million long-term full-time jobs. So that's net long-term full-time jobs minus lost. In the US, it's about 3 to 4 million. Now in Canada, in our plans, I think there is a loss of jobs, small loss of jobs, because there's so much fossil fuel industry that's going to be displaced. But that's not accounting for if we build up an electric vehicle industry, for example, electric heat pump industry. If we build up these electric appliance industries in Canada too, then we're going to, in machines, the job creation will exceed the job loss. That's mostly in Alberta, which is in the fall. Not Ontario. I didn't do it province by province, but I think in most of the job losses right now would be in Alberta, where there's a lot of fossil fuel growth. But they
have an election coming up. They have an election coming up.
Yeah, but so the thing is, there is a transition pathway. So to retrain, I mean, there needs to be job retraining to go into clean renewable energy systems. So, but there are new jobs, not only like in wind and solar and geothermal, but also in batteries, in electric vehicles, in heat pumps, electric arc furnaces, in steel production, in ammonia production, for example, electrolyzers, fuel cells, and keeping grid stability. So, every study I've seen that looks at a renewable transition finds more jobs created than lost.
Mm-hmm.
How long they last is going to be.
Yeah, I think it's just the pain that the governments want to avoid in the short term. Let me go to the next question. Are your energy plans based on an assumption of unlimited economic growth? In the absence of a planned decommissioning of fossil infrastructure, are you assuming that price alone will drive a transition to renewables rather than renewables simply being added to the energy mix?
Well, I think due to the low cost of wind and solar going forward, we're going to have a natural transition, but it's going to be slower than we need unless we put strong policies in place to speed it up, because we need 80% transition by 2030. And the only way to get there is with strong policies, because there's nothing encouraging existing fossil fuels from going out of business. Like in the US, we have coal plants that are grandfathered in under the Clean Air Act amendments. They can go at 2 cents a kilowatt hour. Nothing's going to force them out unless there's some policy put in place. So we need there is going to be a natural transition due to low cost, but we do need strong policies to speed it up.
Mm-hmm. Canada is supposed to be announcing 100% net zero later this year. Is that important in your opinion?
Well, I think it's going to include things like carbon capture, blue hydrogen, direct air capture. So it's going to be a greenwash. So I don't think it's real. It's you should be wary of the word net zero, because that just means that they're allowing things like bioenergy to be counted as reducing carbon capture to be counted when it actually doesn't do it. This is
interesting point.
Phony accounting.
One last question before we wrap up. Do you believe that if these measures were taken, the environment would be able to regenerate itself? If we hit a deadline of 2035, will that help things regenerate?
Well, in terms of health, immediately. So every little bit of pollution that's eliminated from the air today will save somebody's life tomorrow. So if we transition all our energy, we will eliminate 7 million air pollution deaths worldwide as soon as we eliminate all that energy. So that will be an immediate benefit, hundreds of millions of fewer illnesses, lower hospitalization rates, lower emergency room visit rates, less workman's compensation, less insurance payments. It'll save the economy enormous amount of money immediately. In terms of climate, that'll take longer because CO2 takes a while to get out of the air. However, the second leading cause of global warming is black carbon, which is a particle that has a very short lifetime. If we stop its emissions, we'll have immediate benefits from that. Methane has longer lifetime, carbon dioxide even longer. So greenhouse gases it'll take a while for the impacts to be seen in terms of the climate, except for the black carbon part, which we'll see immediately. but air pollution benefits will be immediate, and so will energy security benefits.
Mhm. Last question. How worried are you about the state of affairs right now?
Well, on one hand, I'm very confident that we can solve the problem, that we know how to do it, and we have the technologies we need. On the other hand, I know there are a lot of people not only fighting against a solution, but there are also a bunch of people competing with their own proposed solutions, which usually are self-interested in terms of tied to the fossil fuel industry or tied to some financial gain. So this is part of the problem, is competing proposals to solve the problem. But I'm optimistic that, there will be a lot of places, a lot of countries and states and towns and provinces that will transition and will get there, and there'll be others that'll lag behind. So I think everybody will eventually get there, but it'll take a while in some places, especially in countries that are in poverty or in war-torn countries.
Right. Well, listen, thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate it. And I apologize to everyone. We could not get to all of the questions, but perhaps they can reach out to you. They can also get your book. I saw it on Amazon. And thank you for your time. I know you have to exit, and we'll let you go, and we'll move on to the next part of our session.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and really appreciate it.
Great. Greetings from Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby's.
All right. So let's move on to a more local look after we've got the big picture from Mark Jacobson. Our next guest is a woman who has pushed very hard for local communities to take grassroots steps on cleaning the environment. Gabriella, or Gabby Kalapos, I'm sorry, I mispronounced that, is the executive director of the Clean Air Partnership that's been working with towns and cities across Ontario to promote air-sparing projects. And Gabriella studied science and environmental geography at Concordia University and has a master's degree in environment and business from the University of Waterloo. She joins us tonight to talk about her take on Ontario's plans, her concerns, and how local communities can react. Please welcome Gabriella Kalapos.
Thanks, Avis. Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. I apologize for the darkness. The sun has set in the time period and the light's just not as good. And if anyone's wondering where that rapid is in the background, that is the Mattawa River, just along the Voyageur route. I highly recommend it. It's one of the beautiful water systems, and it's part of the old Voyageur route between Montreal and into the Great Lakes. I'd love to chat with you today about Ontario's energy transformation and the opportunity that's ahead of us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Clean Air Partnership. We're a charitable environmental organization. Our main modus operandi is to work with municipal governments and their various partners. So while we work mainly with municipalities, we recognize that municipalities and no government can address this issue all on their own, and that we work with municipal governments and their various partners to increase the ambition and implementation of their clean air and climate change actions. We go about doing that mainly through outreach, awareness building, collaboration. Really, it comes down to as each municipality undertakes their clean air climate change action, we get them to share what they've done with all the other municipalities. And we say, okay, if one of you can do it, what would stop all of you from doing it? Bring the collective brain power together, pool resources, ensure that we try and reduce duplication across municipalities as much as possible, and really, really advance and leapfrog it. The implementation and the ambition of climate actions. So the first step to do in terms of identifying what needs to happen to get towards a net zero emission society and our communities. Really, first of all, I'm going to speak to a couple of things, but some of the key big buckets that municipalities are working on really come from buildings, transportation, and waste. Those are key areas that municipalities are advancing. So what does municipal climate leadership look like? It started out, I'd say, like the kind of getting the municipal house in order. And while a municipality's own emissions, greenhouse gas emissions usually count for only between 3 to 8% of a community's overall greenhouse gas emissions, if you're going to be getting your own house in order is still very, very important. And it's really a climate accountability. So it started out with green fleets, right sizing, anti-idling, driver training, fuel efficiency, all of that stuff. I would say right now, they're in green fleets 2.0, EV transition, light duty vehicles is really the focus that many municipalities are using. I do believe that chances are there are going to be a lot more movements towards heavy duty vehicles because at present is a bit of a gap in terms of what's available in the market for municipalities to address. Their buildings, really moving away from incremental energy efficiency improvements and looking at it from the perspective of how do you get these municipal buildings to net zero emissions. First steps you have to do is really address the building envelope, fuel switching from fossil fuels to electrification, renewable installations. And then one of the key things that's coming out on the findings is, a lot of people are worried about, oh, what does it mean to switch from fossil fuels to electricity? Because of the price differential that has traditionally been in Ontario, where natural gas is traditionally cheap, electricity is a little bit more expensive in terms of than what it costs in other kind of jurisdictions and provinces in Canada, but not in comparison to many other jurisdictions. One of the key things that I think municipalities are finding right now is that if you bring together your net zero emissions plans along with your asset management plans, you can actually become net positive over the time frame of the asset. So people always were a bit concerned about the net zero emissions pathway increasing their energy costs. But when you look at it from an asset management perspective, and when assets come up for renewal and you switch them to electrification and you build in reducing demand and invest in addressing energy efficiency and building envelope opportunities, you actually come out significant net positive in terms of your energy costs over time. And that all comes down to the reducing demand, and then meeting the demand that is there with renewable sources and electrification. I did want to highlight, yes, absolutely. Electric vehicles are key component of the transportation transformation, but the electric vehicles are not going to solve our transportation woes. We really need to switch out our prioritization, really highlight about moving people as quickly or as efficiently and as safely as possible over highlighting and prioritizing moving vehicles as quickly as possible, as many vehicles as quickly as possible, because that traditionally has been our transportation system planning. Move as many vehicles as you can as quickly as possible. Now you really need to kind of switch that around, and it's about moving people as efficiently and as safely as possible. And we need to stop prioritizing the ability for single occupancy vehicles to get around as easily as possible. Did want to highlight the retrofit ecosystem. There is no bigger economic and job creation opportunity, as far as I can see it, than the energy efficiency in the retrofit market. All of the buildings that are, large majority of the buildings that are with us right now are going to be here within 50 years. We need to invest in building, improving our energy efficiency of our existing building stock. The best thing about it is that most of the money we spend on energy leaves our communities. Most of the money we spend on energy efficiency and results in energy, local economic development and job creation that cannot be outsourced. So did want to highlight huge job creation opportunity. In addition, it's a really great opportunity for youth who really are wanting to make a difference in the world and have their values brought into their jobs. And this is a really good opportunity for that. So I did want to highlight that. In addition, it's a nice balance between some jobs will require a lot of training. Some jobs in the energy efficiency world will kind of be relatively easier to kind of move into. So there is a step ladder in terms of moving people into this job opportunity. So did want to kind of speak to Ontario. So we're up against a bit of a challenge on this one. I'm going to just move this on this one. We're against a bit of a challenge on this one in that we have a bias in Ontario to that's the light, the sun just went down. So there's a bias in Ontario that we favor big generation, big transmission, one flow of electrons. That's been our traditional power electricity system. That isn't our only option anymore. It was our only option at some point in times in the past, but there's huge opportunities in moving into a future power system that is going to be a much more Internet of Things. It's kind of like speaking to like providing that consumers are no longer just going to be consumers. We no longer have to rely only on big generation, big transmission that gets the one-way flow of electrons into homes. Consumers are going to be producers now. There is an opportunity for individuals to have more autonomy, more control over the energy systems that run their homes. Now, there is no system that we have right now that is well served to providing this future power system opportunities to customers, to businesses. We need to build a robust future power system that makes uptake into this new system as easy as the old traditional power, where you just kind of like, you could bring in the power. And I'll use an example. If a new development wants to build without fossil fuels, well, actually, I'll backtrack. If a new development wants to build status quo system, in all honesty, what they really need to do is send 2 emails, one to the fossil fuel utility, one to the electrical utility, and the pipelines and the wires come in, and ta-da, their energy planning work here is done. But if they want to function towards a future power system and build a low carbon development, they either have to diversify their real estate developments, advance a low carbon energy solution, or work with a new, probably a non-regulated energy utility, which provides a little bit more apprehension on the part of developers. So we need to advance a policy and a system that fosters people's ability to participate in this future power system. So what does that look like? Really, when it comes down to it, there needs to be a more robust energy decision matrix in Ontario. We need to look at our energy system as a comprehensive approach. No longer should we be separating out the electrical system from the fossil fuel system. Look at it as an overall approach. If we are going to eliminate fossil fuels energy use from people's homes, they chances are their electricity use will increase. Absolutely. But will their cost increase? Maybe not. Not if we plan this well, because while their electricity costs will increase, their fossil fuel costs will reduce to nothing. In the overall scheme, are they further ahead than they were when they were using a dual system between fossil fuels and electricity? We have to look at it from a co-benefits perspective. What difference does it make to public health? What difference does it make to advancing job creation opportunities? And I'm going to give you an example of some decisions that could be better influenced and better made if we actually use a energy decision matrix. This is from the expansion of the natural gas system in Ontario. This is taken directly from the press release from the provincial government as they've done it. We spent $234 million to connect 8,750 connections. That comes at a cost about $27,000. The estimated to save customers between $250 a year to $1,500 a year in energy costs. We know it's not going to, so that kind of highlights that savings would be about 2.2 million to 13 million. We know it's not going to be 2.2 million because that's not everybody's only going to save 250. We know that it's not going to be 13 million because not everybody's going to save 1,500. So we know it's somewhere between there. But if we look at it from a payback perspective, at $250 a year, that comes to a 106-year payback. And if we look at it from 1,500, we know that it's a 17-year payback. So the fastest payback we can get on that fossil fuel investment that we're all paying for, that we're all subsidizing off the rate base, is a 17-year payback. If we had looked at efficiency opportunities, geothermal, heat pumps, net metering, and compared the costs and benefits of reducing electricity to those customers, how would that have phased out? Which would be a better option? We need to look at that. So I wanted to kind of speak to it. What's the difference between the energy transition pathway? Really, when we look at the traditional system, it's fossil fuel based, it's non-integrated, not a few stakeholders. There's like centralized entities that control the energy system. It's unidirectional. Electrons go from generating station to consumers. It's the fossil fuel era. Now, if we look at where we're going to be going, We're going to be looking at renewable energies. It's going to be a democratization of energy because consumers can actually consumers can become producers. There's huge opportunities and flexibility in that. It will help us achieve our net zero emissions new developments. It will advance a comprehensive retrofit program, because one of the things that happens in Ontario in the centralized energy planning and that traditionally has taken place is that people don't factor in all the energy efficiency opportunities. They don't look at reducing demand. They just look at the projections of increases in electricity, and they advance and increase the generation and the transmission, and don't rely nearly as much on the reducing demand, because that has a savings and that can kind of offset a lot of the increases associated with the transition towards net zero. So I really wanted to highlight, we need to look at our energy system in a much more comprehensive way, and we need to build a robust policy framework that enables customers to move from the old unidirectional system and create easy systems for them to tap into that can help them move towards decarbonizing their buildings and advancing the energy systems of the future. Because I want Ontario to be a participant in this low carbon economy. I am tired of always relying on other jurisdictions and us being consumers of other jurisdictions' low carbon efforts. And I think Ontario's can really be a really strong participant, and I look forward to making it happen as well. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Gabby. Thank you so much. You've got so much energy and really good facts there. So thank you. We will take some questions after the next presentation. So our next speaker doesn't like long introductions, so we'll make it short. But Jack Gibbons is famous today because he has an article where he's widely quoted in the Toronto Star on wind in the Great Lakes could provide the power that Ontario needs. He is an economist, a former commissioner for Toronto Hydro, a former Ontario Energy Board staff member. He's also the chair of the Ontario Clean Air Alliance, which led a 17-year campaign to phase out Ontario's 5 dirty coal plants. And Jack Gibbons, over to you.
Well, thanks, Avis, for your kind introduction. And it was great to hear Mark speak today and tell us the good news that we can meet all of our future electricity needs and energy needs from renewables. But unfortunately, here in Ontario, we're going in exactly the wrong direction. So tonight, I would like to discuss 3 topics. First, Doug Ford's electricity plans. Second, I would like to talk about 2 key geographical facts about Ontario that we can exploit to help us move to a renewable energy future. And third, I'd like to talk about the need for strong leadership from Prime Minister Trudeau. So next slide, please. Now this slide shows the historic and forecast greenhouse gas pollution from our electric power sector from 2005 to 2043. And the good news is that thanks to the phase out of our 5 dirty coal-fired power plants, the pollution from our electric generating stations fell by 93% between 2005 and 2017. But since 2017, the pollution from our power plants has started to rise again. And according to the IESO, or Independent Electricity System Operator, the pollution from our power plants will increase by 700% by 2043. And if this occurs, we will lose 60% of the pollution reduction benefits that we achieved by phasing out dirty coal. Next slide, please. Now this slide shows the percentage of our electricity supply that comes from fossil gas. And in 2017, it was only 4%. Last year, it was 10%. But the IESO is forecasting that by 2043, we'll be getting 27% of our electricity supply from fossil gas. Clearly, we're going in the wrong direction. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So Doug Ford's energy plan. In addition to being very pro-gas, Doug Ford is very pro-nuclear, very pro-high-cost nuclear. In fact, Doug Ford wants to meet 100% of our future electricity needs from polluting gas and high-cost nuclear energy. So the exact opposite of the plan that Mark Jacobson is advocating for. Next slide, please. So there's two key geographical facts that Ontario should exploit to move to a renewable energy future. And the first one is that we are located right beside 4 of the Great Lakes. And the Great Lakes have a huge wind power potential. And we released a report yesterday that shows that the Great Lakes could provide enough electricity to supply more than 100% of our electricity needs, and they could do it at a cost that is 40% lower than the cost of new nuclear reactors. So that's the good news. The bad news is today we're getting 0 electricity from our Great Lakes, and that's because back in 2011, our former Premier Dalton McGuinty put a moratorium on offshore wind power development. So clearly, we need to rescind the moratorium on Great Lakes wind power. Next slide, please. Now, we all know that the wind doesn't always blow. So wind power, Great Lakes wind power, must be combined with a storage option. And here's the second important geographical fact for Ontario. We are so lucky to be located right next door to the province of Quebec, since Quebec's huge hydroelectric reservoirs can act like a giant battery for our wind and solar energy. And according to an MIT study, Quebec's hydroelectric reservoirs are our lowest cost storage option for wind and solar energy. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to turn to the IESO's Pathways to Decarbonization report. This report was released by the IESO in December, and it outlines their proposed strategy of how Ontario can move to net zero greenhouse gas pollution by 2050. And the IESO is proposing to do that we should meet 65% of our future electricity needs from renewables and 35% from new nuclear. Next slide, please. And this slide shows the proposed electricity options that the IESO thinks that we should embrace. And I'd like to turn your attention to offshore wind. The IESO is suggesting that we should get 11 terawatt hours from offshore wind. But as we saw in a previous slide, Ontario's Great Lakes wind power potential is much, much greater than 11 terawatt hours. In fact, it's at least 151 terawatt hours. So this tells us that if we ramp up Great Lakes wind power, then we can eliminate the need for any new nuclear power to meet our future electricity needs. So what the IESO study has done is it has confirmed Mark Jacobson's claim that we can meet 100% of our future electricity needs just from renewables. So that's really good news. Next slide, please. Now, given that we've learned that renewables can meet all of our future needs and at a much lower cost than polluting gas or nuclear power, the question becomes, well, why is Doug Ford proposing an energy future, an electricity future that is 100% gas and 100% nuclear for new supply? Well, one potential answer is that he's stuck in the 1950s and he has an ideological hatred for wind and solar. But there's other facts that we should also consider. because it's important to remember that the policies that Doug Ford is promoting are in the best interest of a number of very large and powerful corporations. For example, our two largest electric utilities, Ontario Power Generation and Bruce Power, they will very much benefit from Doug Ford's policies. Also, Cameco, which is a large Canadian uranium mining company, it will benefit from Doug Ford's policies. And also, our two largest electric utilities, our two largest gas utilities, TC Energy and Enbridge, they also will benefit from Doug Ford's electricity policies. So we are up against not only Doug Ford, but some very powerful and large corporations. Next slide, please. So if we want to if we want to phase out gas power by 2030, and if we want to move to a net zero carbon electricity grid by 2030, we're going to need strong leadership from Prime Minister Trudeau to help us. And so we're asking Prime Minister Trudeau to establish clean electricity regulations, which will prohibit the building of new gas-fired power plants in Ontario effective immediately, and which will also require Ontario to move to a net zero carbon electricity grid by 2030. Next slide, please. So we need your help to persuade Prime Minister Trudeau. So please send him an email message tonight asking him to establish clean electricity regulations, which will lead to a phase out of gas power in Ontario by 2030. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Jack. That's I love the call to action and what people can do, because there are questions where people saying, okay, I'm learning, what can I do? So we're going to move into about 10 minutes of questions and answers. And I'd like to encourage people to turn on their cameras in this last segment. And I will try and do my best to put out the questions to everyone. My first one would be to Jack, and that has to do with the offshore wind turbines and watching them in the lake. I know that some areas have been encouraged. There was a discussion of it in the past off of the south part of the city, and there was a resounding rejection of it because they're just, they will be visible in the water. They can't go that far off. And people boat in Lake Ontario, and, it's a not in my backyard issue. Do you see that as being a problem here?
Well, certainly that's why former Premier McGuinty imposed a moratorium, because there was opposition from people who live near the Scarborough Bluffs, who didn't want to see wind turbines 2 to 4 kilometers offshore. But the Great Lakes are very large, and they could be put further offshore than 2 to 4 kilometers. And that's what's being approved recently near Cleveland, Ohio, where the wind turbines that are being approved would be further offshore than was proposed in the Scarborough Bluffs. But so yes, there's no perfect electricity solution, but we've got a climate crisis. We have to deal with it. And wind and solar are the two most environmentally benign options to move forward. And so hopefully we will be able to persuade people that this is the way we should go.
Okay, thank you. So Gabby, to you, a couple of questions. Number one of the viewers was asking, are you getting any sense of buy-in to the move away from fossil fuels from school boards?
I actually have to say we haven't engaged in school boards for the most part, but we work with municipalities for the most part. There's a lot of, I would say that eco schools would probably have a much better indication of that. But I would say that the school boards are definitely advancing energy efficiency, and they're also advancing the installation of renewables on their buildings. I think in addition to that, I honestly do believe that school boards and their playgrounds will be really great opportunities for geothermal loops that could serve existing communities. It makes logical sense that that is something that could play out, but this is where the part of it. How do we streamline this? Schools are not energy developers, so they need to have something that a system that they could opt into. So we need to have create the demand, which means in many ways we need to enable municipalities, or if the province isn't going to do it, they need to enable municipalities to work with the community to drive uptake, to hook into these geothermal systems. New developments are a no-brainer place to start on this one because there's no existing system. So we can actually create a really robust low carbon system for new developments and then use the capacity built in that new developments to address the existing building sector.
Okay. And to both of you, one of the questions was, is there enough incentive to new industry in the province to have them move away from fossil fuels to heat their building? Are there enough incentives to get them to do that, or should there be more done?
Jack, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, the carbon tax is rising each year, and that will increase the financial incentive. And for homeowners, there are some generous financial incentives to install heat pumps. For example, you can get incentives from the federal government of up to $6,500 to install an air source heat pump in your home.
So that would be, you're encouraging people to look at that as an option.
Oh, absolutely. We've done a number of studies that show that when your furnace comes to the end of its life, your lowest cost option to meet your future heating and cooling needs is to install a heat pump instead of buying a new fossil gas furnace.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a question for Jack again. And this is from Ken, who is saying, it seems to me that the IESO is not a friend, but an enemy to clean energy activists and not an ally. Is he wrong about that? And if not, how do you fix the situation? And the IESO is the energy.
The IESO is the Independent Electricity System Operator. It's a provincial agency that operates the grid and procures new supply. And yes, well, the IESO, they report to Premier Doug Ford, and they adopt policies that he likes. So the fundamental problem is that we have a premier in Ontario who doesn't want to move to a renewable energy future. And the IESO is following the marching orders that it's getting from the premier. If we had a premier in Ontario who was pro-renewables, then the IESO would implement that premier's agenda. So the fundamental problem is political. We've got to elect political leaders who are pro-renewable.
Okay, and that brings us to another question from the audience. I guess I'll give this to you, Gabby. What is it that the public can do, given that we're in between elections? How can people move the needle? You can't vote right now. There are some municipal elections coming up, but what can people do?
I would say, don't make your voice heard. Send emails to your MPP, send emails to your councillor. Really, these message needs to be coming to politicians, not just at election time, but all the time. This needs to be on their radar. They need to know that the public is going to call them to account, that this is something that makes a difference on whether, what, and how people vote. They need to hear that all the time, not just at election time. So I would say that was your first kind of direction of like, let the politicians know what you care about and what you think that they should be, how they should be changing and what decisions they need to be making. So that would be the first one. I would definitely encourage people to run for office. I would also encourage them to call for a little bit more cooperation across political parties, where political parties are prioritizing what is best for Ontario rather than what's best for their party. If we don't work together, we split the vote. This inevitably happens in another 3 years time period on this one. We need to work together. That's divide and conquer has actually changed a lot in terms of our political systems and who gets elected. So absolutely, I saw a number of people saying we need to advocate for proportional representation. And I absolutely think perhaps after 125 years of first past the post, maybe we should update our democratic system. Just saying, that would be a pretty good thing to do on that one. So I think that's one of the key elements. There's also things that you can do. If you don't yet have a community energy efficiency retrofit program in your community, reach out to your municipality. Say this is something we need. There are gaps in the retrofit market that we need to address. And largely, it merely comes to helping homeowners do the retrofits of their homes on their building envelope and fuel switching from fossil fuels to electricity. It's not easy for homeowners to do that right now. It's a new field. It's a new area. They're taking on a part-time job on that one. They need more supports to do that. We need to kind of invest in our job creation opportunities associated with energy efficiency. Send that message to your politicians. They need to hear from people that this is what people care about.
Do you think that, and I know that Jack has made a call out to the federal government, but is this the federal government's jurisdiction to come in and tell Ontario what to do in terms of an energy future?
Well,
Absolutely.
I wish they didn't have to. I wish Ontario would do what is right for Ontario on that one, but we still have a heavy predominance on the status quo system. So if we don't have the leadership at the provincial level, we absolutely need the federal government. The clean electricity standard needs to be advanced. That message needs to be provided to the provincial government because they're at present ignoring that upcoming clean electricity standard. They haven't factored in any of their studies the stranded asset risk associated with advancing these fossil fuel plants. They haven't brought into the cost of carbon capture and storage, which is going to be the requirement in 2030 from the clean electricity standard. They talk, there's a lot of mention about how we're subsidizing renewables, and that came up in the news quite often, but we never talk about all the subsidies that are going to the nuclear power industry. We don't talk about the stranded asset risk. Right now, my heart breaks a little bit every time we bring fossil fuel infrastructure into new developments. That is a stranded asset that we're all going to have to pay for on the rate base. We should not be bringing in fossil fuel infrastructure to new developments in particular. We need to advance a low carbon, no carbon energy system for new developments to tap into. We are going to have to do a lot of retrofitting on existing buildings. But if we say that, we're scared about the affordability issues associated with advancing low carbon energy system and new developments, the only reason we could say that is because we're not factoring in future retrofit costs. And there is no better time to build an efficient low carbon energy system for new developments than at the time of construction. And everything we just build to Ontario Building Code and bring fossil fuel infrastructure into is going to be a stranded asset, and it's going to cost a lot more for those homeowners to retrofit those homes when that time inevitably comes within 10 to 15 years.
Jack, are you seeing anyone in the political spectrum that is actually advocating for the type of energy program that you think we need to have?
Well, yes, in the last provincial election, the NDP, the Liberals, and the Green Party all called for Ontario to move to a net zero carbon electricity grid by 2030. So, and if people remember the election night debate with Steve Paikin, when Steve Paikin pushed Doug Ford on this issue, he said he wouldn't be happy until we had a 100% clean electricity grid. But unfortunately, after he won his second majority government, he forgot what he promised us. And now he's continuing to ramp up gas-fired electricity and moving in the wrong direction. But the other parties, the Liberals, the NDP, and the Green, they've all endorsed the policies that we want in terms of phasing out gas-fired power.
Well, thank you so much, Jack and Gabby. There are so many questions. I have to say, I'm floored by how many people want to talk about heat pumps. That's That says something, right? And I just want to thank everyone who's been a part of this. Now, we still have a couple of things that we have to do, but I do want to point out that there's a survey that Dr. Roy has been putting up that they would love for you to fill out so that they can understand how well the session here today has had an impact. But anyways, thank you to you, and over to Lynn, who's going to conclude our evening.
Thank you. And I want to start these brief closing remarks by sharing with you that I recently, very recently, had need for an 8-day stay at Mount Sinai Hospital for emergency care. I'm incredibly grateful that the advocates were there decades ago to build a high-quality, publicly funded healthcare system. Now it's our turn to ensure that the transition we need right now to a renewable and sustainable energy system for the future gets built. We only have these few years to make the changes that will make our world livable for those who are young now and the next generation to come. We are grateful to every single one of you for taking the time tonight to gain an understanding of what we can do to change the future of energy policy in Ontario. Thank you to our speakers, Mark, Gabby, Jack, to my co-chair, Millie Roy, and to Avis Favreau for contributing so much to our program tonight. And thank you to our tech team from Climate Fast, led by Ray Nakano, and to Angela Bischoff for her superb organizing skills. So you've come out tonight. We urge you now, please join this campaign. Click on the survey, fill it out, put your contact information in. We can turn this around in Ontario if we have the numbers. We know that because People Power brought an end to the use of coal in 2005. Just like we phased out coal, we can do the same for fossil gas. Our primary campaign method is meetings with elected representatives at all levels, federal, provincial, and municipal. There is something that can be done at each level. We are preparing kits for you with clear asks for each level. What we need you to do is to ask for meetings. It can often take a month to book a meeting with your representative. By asking now, you should be able to book a date in May. We already have one meeting scheduled on May 2nd. Let's get on a roll and book dozens of meetings. They can be held in the legislative offices at Queen's Park, in the constituency office, or on Zoom. Our April 5th session outlined how to request a meeting and how to structure a meeting for greatest success. This session is recorded, and we are also going to offer it again on Friday morning this week, that's the 21st, at 11 a.m. When we send you your follow-up note tomorrow, we will include the Zoom link for the session on Friday. Once you've been introduced to this campaign, please request the meetings. Please also tell your family and friends in other parts of Ontario about the campaign so this can be shared across the province. So again, we've got the survey form there with the contact information so that we can reach you, we can support you, and we can connect you with others in your riding or ward. We are more effective when we go in groups. And then everyone is invited to a meeting on May 3rd, where we will go through the lobbying process and our asks in detail, and we will break into small groups to role play the meetings. This is a people-powered movement. We need volunteers for this Beyond Gas advocacy campaign this month and next, and we also need volunteers ongoing with our organizations. How to get involved as a volunteer will be included in our follow-up letter tomorrow. We all have reasons why we have chosen to attend tonight. I am here for my kids. I am here for their future to ensure that they will have a living planet. Mark has shown us that there are no miracles needed to go beyond gas to a renewable energy future. We only have these few years to act, so let's go, people powered. Let's have a screenshot. Maybe people can show their visuals and we can get some screenshots. And while you're getting organized to do that, I'll just say, click on the survey form. When you go out from the meeting, we will share a video about the Ontario Climate Emergencies Campaign 12-Point Climate Action Plan for Ontario, which you can also find on our website. And a big thank you, for all the organizers, the Ontario Climate Emergency Campaign, the Ontario Clean Air Alliance, and Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, and Clean Air Partnership. Thank you all. how we doing? Are we getting any screenshots? Because I'm not doing it myself.
I'm
Anybody?
going to unmute for a moment and ask Ray if we might go to gallery for a moment and get everybody sort of waving maybe, and just get a couple of little shots for
Sure.
if you don't mind, Ray, sure.
Or just raise your hand. Yeah, I've got one and I've got two. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And let's just make this happen. That's what we've got to do. So I think we're having a video now as we go out and take all that energy enthusiasm from tonight and let's work together.
Ontario, there is another way forward. One that is informed by science and respects planetary thresholds and boundaries. One that commits to meaningful relationship building with the original stewards of the earth. One that creates many thousands of decent, secure, sustainable jobs. One that redirects fossil fuel subsidies to achieve real energy security. One that recognizes the climate crisis as the greatest health threat and opportunity of this century. One that achieves deep emissions cuts in buildings and homes, lowering energy costs for all. One that recognizes we do not need more highways to connect and move Ontario. One that recognizes Indigenous people and nature as our greatest climate allies. One that protects food security in Ontario and promotes local food systems. One that boosts climate literacy to engage and activate Ontarians for climate action. One that relies on independent expertise to uphold climate justice principles. One that takes bold and urgent steps to secure a shared future. One that ensures a just transition for all workers. One that prepares Ontario communities for climate disruption still to come. One that addresses environmental racism and intergenerational justice. And one that recognizes that our only way forward is together.
That's it, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everybody, and thanks so much for attending. It was an incredible evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do you need us to stay on for a debrief? Ray was saying something about a debrief.
Yeah, just for a little bit, Evis, once everyone leaves.
Okay.
Whoa. Okay.
I'm learning all about heat pumps from Millie.
A good thing.
It's so interesting. Like the number of comments about heat pumps was like,
Yeah.
It's great. It's going to show you that heat pumps are becoming sexy, and we haven't had a lot of energy efficiency being sexy. You know what I mean?
well, you know what? I think it's one way consumers can actually feel like they're doing something.
Yeah.
Because, you know, tackling the Ford government and, you know, look at the green belt, look at Ontario Place and that whole thing. It's, it's just, it seems like it's a very difficult battle. Anyways, yeah.
Anyways, I think Jack left. I did send him a note, but I guess he must have missed it. So generally, anyway, congratulations everyone for a great webcast. We didn't have any major faux pas or whatever you call it. So I think everything went really well. So I really appreciate Avis, your introductions and keeping things on track with the Q&A, and Gaby, your presentation. Millie, your hosting to start, and Lynn, your thank yous. So though you did forget Sharon and Val, but I didn't get that email to you.
I said the team. Sorry, is that okay?
That's okay. Anyways, what I generally try to do is just do a quick debrief to see what worked for people and what didn't work for people, so that we can always apply it to the next webcast. And that's how we kind of learn from webcast to webcast. So just quickly go around the circle. What did you feel really worked and what didn't work? And then we can all go home and have our suppers or whatever else we have to do.
From my end, I'm not sure that getting the questions on the chat thing worked, because they were speeding by that I could see them and I would try to write them. And when I was writing them, then they'd be gone.
Yeah.
They were gone. And so I was trying to look and listen and look and spin through to locate them. So I don't know what the best way is to do it. Then Millie started to do some photos, but then there's a lag. There's a lag on that. So you almost need a person, like another human, sitting there typing them to me, so that, because they're easier to find in this format.
What we've done in the past is we've given a Google document with them cut and pasted in there, and you just look at it and they come in as they arrive. It's a live document.
I've never done that. Yeah.
But I think it worked well in the past.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
And Ray did set that up for us. Exactly.
Yeah, that's our usual process. But when Millie talked to you about it, I thought that you came up with your own process. Fine, like however you want to do it. But we found that the Google Doc works for us best.
Yeah, the Google. Okay, so on the Google Doc, then what happens is when you open it, the spots get shifted.
It's a live
there.
document, so we just keep adding things in it, and
at least you don't lose anything, right? Because it's always there.
And it stays in the same place once it's on.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, because the problem with trying to text it to you is that there's no way to do it fast enough to keep up. So that's why in the end I resorted to I was taking photos and texting the photo to Avis to try to keep up.
Well, the thing, I've never had that many questions.
There's a lot.
Oh, that's interesting.
From 200 people.
I've never had that many. So they could put them in there or text them
Gabby
to
has
me.
to leave. Sorry, let's get Gabby's debrief.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to say excellent job. I don't have any recommendations. Really well organized webinar. I thought it went really, really well. And thank you so much for including me in it. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Amazing presentation.
Take care. Oh,
we had as many as 200 people watching.
Excellent. Excellent.
Right. Okay, thanks, Gabby. Millie.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to say the main thing is I feel bad. I don't think I supported Avis well enough with those questions. Flying all over. I'm like, So anyways, we should try the Google document next time.
It didn't show though. It came across fairly smooth, I thought.
Davis is a professional.
It's like inside I'm going. And the other thing was that Mark was quite good, and there were so many questions about him, and I had written down 754, and I missed it because there was another question. So that's my problem on that one. I just let him go, even though I had written it down. So,
Okay.
No, wouldn't fault yourself too much for it though, because people were very keen and interested and they stayed to the end. I think pretty much we had a
Oh,
good.
yeah, I think we had 180
Yeah.
at the end. So
Yeah, we've never had that.
That's
Yeah.
what I was looking at. It's like the retention was really high. So then why?
If people are more satisfied if they hear more answers, because we did have a lot of questions. So.
Exactly.
yeah.
So, okay, so Lynn, anything from your end?
No, I think I did get knocked out once, and so I asked you to put me back on as a whatever, so I could show up a co-host.
Well, you got
But I just thought, pardon?
You got knocked out once? You came out once?
Well, I wrote back, and the power cut out here. I don't know what happened. So the internet cut out. So I asked you to reset me. Didn't you reset me?
I didn't do the reset.
No? Oh well.
I might have done it because
Okay.
we're just managing. A few people always get booted out. It's internet connectivity issues.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
it happens.
I was satisfied with, I thank Val for the outline for the land acknowledgement, the content of the land acknowledgement. And that issue did get talked about in the questions and in the discussion. And I think it was great answers, right? So I think it was very encouraging. So, and I was happy, I think, with the closing and pitching people to get involved and get engaged, sign up. So I was happy that way. And just, Ray, Sharon, Val as a tech team just still supported everything. So we knew that that we'd get there. And I have to say too, that I think, Millie, your personal sharing in the beginning set a tone for the night that some people know that Millie and I and Samantha are in a course learning about how to communicate and bring people on board. And I can see you using it in those remarks.
Trying to. Yeah, it doesn't come natural. We've never sort of done,
talking about ourselves. But it was good. It was good. And
no, it was very good opening, Millie. Yeah. I really like it. Yeah.
And it was.
She gets an A+ from me. I'm going check. She could work in TV.
Yeah. And you were just keeping everything steady and on the go there, Avis, in terms of, and honestly, the questions didn't, we thought you were in charge. And
I know, well, that's why we needed a professional as well. You handled that so coolly, because I know, because I knew at the back end, it's like, oh my goodness, these are, I don't know.
Oh, well, now you know. Yeah, but you know what, I had questions and I was thinking if there's a gap, I can always fill it in. So it's very, very interesting, and I really appreciate it. And it was a learning expedition for me on many fronts.
Well, we thank you so much for giving your time. That was just incredible.
Okay.
I will let you know about heat pumps.
And this
please do.
Yeah,
I just want to know, like, how much should it cost with because they're all talking about it. So how much should it cost? And then there's a rebate. And is it hard to get the rebate? Because some of them were saying it was very hard to get a rebate and people need support. Oh yeah, that was Gabby talking about. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we hired someone to do the rebate. Like she's an engineer, and she came and did a pre and post, or she's doing the post energy audit soon, and then she does all the paperwork and everything. So yeah.
Well, just give me a ballpark figure by text. Anyways, thanks everybody. Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so Sharon.
Yeah, no, I thought it was fine. I do think that having the question sheet would be helpful, and it was a whack of people. So I don't, that even the this is where we may have wanted to use a webinar or a webcast setup, because it provides a webcast, like the real setup that they have for big gatherings. And it also allows Q&As to be entered in a separate entry point. Like there's chat, but there's Q&As. I think it might be worth doing that. I don't know how you get that set up, but this was of that size. I mean, we did all right, but it's like, it was at the limits of letting all those people in quickly enough.
Yeah, we tried to set up for that. We actually upgraded the CAPE account to do the webinar. So we had paid for the upgrades and everything, but then, I mean, Ray, it's so much thanks to you, Ray, for jumping in at the last minute, because we just weren't getting, we had the account, but we didn't have enough support. And for Ray to be comfortable running it and all, it just, seemed like, okay, we just abandoned that account at the end and went with.
So maybe we should do some kind of a simulation where we become comfortable with that technology.
But I also think that people felt more comfortable as part of a community event. This style is quite different when you go to the webinar. It's really about the presentations. I find.
Yeah,
So,
the webinar, you're very
pros and
restricted in doing anything with the audience. In fact, we pretty much replicated that. They can't show their video, they can't talk, they can't even chat. Actually, they can only chat to the host of the webinar.
But people could chat on this one, which was was nice.
Yeah, there are pros and cons. I thought there was a you can chat option in the more in the big guys webcast kind of setup, but maybe there isn't.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go with Val. Val, you want your input?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad it's recorded because I wasn't concentrating on it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, I think there's been some frustration around, there were a lot of questions and